Chapter 1. In the last years of the Song dynasty, in the suburbs of Chang'an, night, a young man in his 20s stood alone in the wide field of wild grass. He stood with his hands behind his back and looked up at the crescent moon in the sky. He was dressed in a blue robe and had a carefree scarf on his head. His face was like a beautiful jade, his hair was as black as ink, and his eyes were like cold stars. Although his face was delicate and refined, there was a hint of evil in between his brows. It was late at night. Although it was summer, it was still a bit cold. There were no lights in the distant Chang and city, and everything was silent. However, in the wilderness, there were all kinds of unknown insects chirping happily in the grass. The young man stood quietly in the grass that was half a man's height and calmly admired the moonlight in Yikong. Whoosh! A cold wind blew, and the wild grass began to shake violently. For some unknown reason, the buzzing of insects suddenly stopped. Only the rustling of various insects could be heard in the bushes. These insects seemed to be frightened and crawled back to their nests. Not only insects, but all the birds and beasts from big foxes, pythons, wolves and dogs to small spiders, centipedes, rats and scorpions, all appeared in an instant and then disappeared in an instant. After a while, there was no more movement in the wilderness. It was dead silent. The young man smiled slightly and did not care at all. The wind was getting stronger and stronger, and the tall grass was almost stuck to the ground. The young man's blue robe was also fluttering in the wind due to the sudden wind, making flapping noises. At the same time, the weather changed. The sky that was full of stars suddenly became covered with dark clouds. Thick black clouds rolled in from all directions and pressed very low, as if they could reach out and touch them. The crescent moon was immediately swallowed up by the overwhelming dark clouds. The young man slowly retracted his gaze and smiled faintly. He said to himself, "What should come has finally come." Kacha! In the rolling dark clouds, purple lightning split the clouds like a sharp sword. Boom! A huge, thunderous roar followed, shaking the ground so much that it seemed as if it was shaking. The young man put away his smile and raised his head to look at the sky again. He saw black clouds rolling and purple lightning shuttling back and forth. The black clouds were like 10,000 horses galloping, and the purple lightning was like 1,000 swords piercing through the sky. "You don't have much ability, but you sure know how to put on airs." The young man sneered. Whoosh! As soon as the young man's voice fell, 7 balls of light rushed out from the clouds. They were as big as a bucket and had different colors. After these 7 balls of light broke through the clouds, they whistled directly towards the young man, dragging long tails of light behind them like shooting stars. Boom! 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 The 7 light balls landed on the ground and exploded. 7 colored light shone like stars, sparkling and dispersing. In the blink of an eye, the 7 balls of light had turned into 7 people, surrounding the young man in the middle. These 7 people had strange appearances, and they wore different clothes. Auspicious chi coiled around their bodies, and auspicious mist suffused the air. The leader wore a golden crown with 9 clouds on his head, a crimson crane robe, a 5-colored silk belt around his waist, and a pair of cloud immortal shoes. He had white hair and a youthful face. He held a golden coiled dragon staff in his hand, and a wisp of white beard fluttered in front of his chest. The remaining 6 people were men and women, old and young. They were either wearing 9 scarves, 7-star crowns, white Taoist robes, or embroidered robes. They were dressed differently, and each of them held a weapon. "You're a divine immortal from the upper realm, but you bully the weak with numbers." The young man curled his lips and laughed. Eldritch! A middle-aged man in a white Taoist robe pointed at the young man. "You use your cultivation base to torment living beings and harm countless people. What you've done is intolerable. We're ordered to take you back to the upper realm to await your punishment." Oomph! The young man called Eldritch sneered. "Torment living beings? Harm countless people? You're really an official. If you want to condemn someone, you can always find a pretext." "What? Are you saying that we've wronged you?" Another person in an embroidered robe and holding a sword spoke. "Have you not killed enough people? I'm afraid that more than a few thousand people have died at your hands. My CI family has been cultivating for more than 500 years. The young man smiled. Even if I count the number of people I've killed as 5,000, I only kill 10 people a year on average. You immortals bring disasters and plagues at the drop of a hat. Every time, thousands of people die. Compared to you, is the number of people I've killed considered many? What nonsense! The person in the embroidered robe shouted sternly. These people did evil in their previous lives, and they should be punished. This is the cycle of the heavenly axiom, and karma is not good. You've been cultivating for hundreds of years, but you don't even know this principle. As the saying goes, great truths are simple. Since these people ended up like this because they did evil in their previous lives, then what's the difference between those who died at my hands and them? Aren't they just asking for it? Eldritch retorted. It's true that I've killed countless people in my life, but none of those who died at my hands were wronged. They were all evil people. You're right. Karma is not good. These people did evil because of it, and dying at my hands is the result. That's all. You? The man in the embroidered robe was speechless. What? Am I wrong? Eldritch retorted. Sir, you're wrong. The leading immortal with white hair and a ruddy complexion leaned on the golden coiled dragon staff and took a few steps forward before speaking. Those people were indeed evil people and deserved to die. However, when they were killed by you, sir, they were still alive. You should know that the human body is hard to come by. You've killed so many innocent souls that their resentment soared to the sky and caused the upper realm to be furious. What's the use of keeping such people in this world? Every day they stay is another day of evil. Eldritch replied with a smile. I'm enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens. What's wrong with that? You're wrong again. A woman dressed in a 5-colored robe spoke up. Since they did evil, naturally the imperial court and the government will come out to punish them. Even if the imperial court is incompetent and the government protects them, the underworld will still have the right to reward and punish them after they die. As the saying goes, there's a god 3 feet above your head. As a cultivator, you're neither an immortal nor a god. What right do you have to take the lives of others? You want to arrest me because of this? Eldritch raised his eyebrows and asked. You've killed too many people, and you took their lives by force, causing karma to be in chaos. Resentment is rampant, and the heavenly court is furious. Another man dressed in white who looked like a scholar spoke up. I advise you to surrender today and follow us back to the heavenly court to confess. What if I don't? Eldritch said coldly. What can you do to me? If you don't want to submit, then we can only do things according to the rules. The man in the embroidered robe took a step forward and spoke. Ha ha. Eldritch looked up to the sky and laughed. I've fought no less than 100 battles in my life, and I've never been defeated. Today, I really want to see what the immortals of the upper realm are capable of. Stubborn and unrepentant, the man in the embroidered robe said, and without any movement, his figure disappeared. Umph. Eldritch sneered, and his figure disappeared as well. Chapter 2. The proud moon heavenly scripture really lives up to its name. It can actually withstand the power of an immortal. The woman in the 5-colored robe exclaimed. Although Eldritch is arrogant and unruly, he is also a peerless genius. The immortal holding the golden coiled dragon staff looked up at the battle in the sky and stroked his pure white beard. Since ancient times, people who can comprehend the Tao by themselves are few and far between. Those who can create their own supreme secret techniques can be counted on one hand. This Eldritch was able to create the proud moon heavenly scripture within 100 years. It's really rare and unprecedented. Sigh. The old immortal sighed and said, if it wasn't for his evil aura and his killing intent, he could have become a golden immortal or even an ancestral master in the future. Is he that powerful? The woman in the 5-colored robe frowned. No wonder the 7 of us came down to capture him. Boom! While the immortals were talking, another loud sound came from the sky. The green light ball that wrapped the immortal in the brocade robe was already broken. The immortal in the brocade robe was also shaken by Eldritch's overbearing spiritual power and fell rapidly from the sky. A true immortal from the upper realm is nothing more than this." Under the clouds, Eldritch sneered. On the ground, the immortal in the white robe saw the immortal in the brocade robe fall from the sky. His body shook and a shadow flew straight into the sky. He reached out and caught the immortal in the brocade robe and slowly landed on the ground. At this time, the immortal in the brocade robe's face was pale and half of the auspicious aura around him had been shaken away. If it wasn't for the support of the inner core, his true essence would have been scattered and he would have lost his position. What an arrogant tone. "Let me fight you." Seeing Eldritch's arrogant words, the immortal in the white robe moved again and instantly turned into a white light that soared into the sky. In the blink of an eye, he was standing in front of Eldritch. What a handsome body movement. Eldritch smiled and clapped. "The handsome part is still behind," the immortal in the white robe said, and pulled out the sword on his back. It was dazzling and dazzling, with thousands of rays of light and auspicious aura. "It's worthy of being called an immortal's item." "Good sword." Eldritch nodded and praised. After the scholar in white pulled out his sword, he didn't say anything and stabbed forward. Swoosh! A ray of white light shot out from the tip of the sword, heading straight for Eldritch's face. The corners of Eldritch's mouth curled up. His body swayed, and he instantly moved 3 feet to the left, dodging the scholar in white's move. Swoosh! Schwa! Swish! Seeing that Eldritch's movements were not below his, the scholar in white used his best skill, the fleeting sword technique. As he waved the startled sword, it shone brightly, and one sword light after another enveloped his entire body. In the end, it actually formed a protective light sphere completely made up of sword chi. The sword chi was so strong that even the dark clouds above his head started to disperse, splitting open a huge hole. What a powerful sword aura! Eldritch stopped smiling and became serious. 10,000 fleeting swords. As soon as the scholar in white finished speaking, the protective light sphere surrounding him instantly turned into countless sword lights, which pounced on Eldritch, who was floating in front of him. The momentum was so strong that even the remaining 6 people on the ground changed their expressions. Taoist White Crane's fleeting sword technique is indeed powerful. Among the 6 people on the ground, an immortal who was dressed as a Taoist and held a horsetail was side, as expected of one of the 3 ultimate skills of the immortal sword. Taoist Liu of the Thunder Sect's purple firmament sword technique, Luce Immortal Ujizi's ethereal sword technique, and Taoist White Crane's fleeting sword technique are known as the 3 ultimate skills of the immortal sword. An immortal dressed in a white Taoist robe next to him continued, "If this Eldritch encounters Taoist White Crane, he'll definitely lose within 3 moves. You're thinking too simply." An immortal dressed as a Taoist who had been silent since descending to the lower realm frowned. Just now, Eldritch forced Taoist Wong to retreat with 1 move, so you can imagine his cultivation. In my opinion, unless we attack together, it won't be easy to capture Eldritch alive. With that, he clasped his hands behind his back and raised his head to watch the battle. High up in the sky, Eldritch didn't dare to be negligent when he saw the 10,000 swords of his opponent's fleeting sword technique. He immediately used his body movement technique, and with a whoosh, he turned into a white light and flew into the dark clouds. However, the 10,000 sword lights behind him were hot on his heels, and Eldritch also rushed into the dark clouds. "Want to dodge?" The scholar in white smiled. "It's not that easy." In the dark clouds, Eldritch originally wanted to use the cover of the clouds to dodge Taoist White Crane's fleeting swords, but he didn't expect that the 10,000 sword lights behind him seemed to have a mind of their own. No matter how he moved through the clouds, the 10,000 sword lights still followed him closely, not letting him go. While dodging the sword lights, Eldritch unintentionally looked down and saw that the remaining 6 immortals were watching the battle attentively from the ground. The corner of his mouth curled up, and a plan came to his mind. Whoosh! Eldritch turned into a white light and instantly broke through the clouds, pouncing toward the ground. Whoosh! The 10,000 sword lights also immediately changed their direction, following closely behind Eldritch. Seeing this scene, the 6 immortals on the ground instantly changed their expressions. Scatter. The old immortal in the lead warned the remaining 5 immortals while turning into a golden light to dodge. After hearing the old immortal's warning, the remaining 5 immortals also used their own abilities, either turning into a breeze, smoke, or auspicious light, all of them dodging. This fleeting sword technique was no joke, and it definitely deserved its reputation as one of the 3 wonders of the immortal sword. Not to mention the demons of the Mountain Island Cave. Even the 8 tribes, orthodox gods, and universal celestial masters will be seriously injured if they were hit. This was the reason why Eldritch didn't forcibly receive the attack. Whoosh! When the white light that Eldritch turned into was less than a chi away from the ground, it instantly changed its direction, sticking close to the ground and flying horizontally at high speed. Whoosh! The 10,000 sword lights rushed into the ground like a rainstorm. However, what was surprising was that the ground wasn't damaged at all, and the 10,000 sword lights quietly broke through the ground. Eldritch floated in midair and let out a long breath. This fleeting sword technique was indeed worthy of its reputation as an immortal. However, at this moment, he heard laughter coming from the sky. It was Taoist Master White Crane's laughter. Whoosh! Just as Eldritch was wondering why Taoist Master White Crane was laughing, the 10,000 sword lights once again gushed out from the ground a few zhong away from his feet. This time, it was even faster than before. Eldritch's pupils instantly constricted. The sword lights were actually still there. However, this time, he didn't choose to escape, but instead quietly closed his eyes. Seeing Eldritch close his eyes, Taoist Master White Crane thought that he was waiting for death with his eyes closed, and promptly pointed his finger at the 10,000 sword lights that had already rushed in front of Eldritch. The 10,000 sword lights instantly went around Eldritch, and once again intertwined into a white ball of light, completely wrapping Eldritch within. Their mission was to capture him and detain him back to the heavenly realm, not to execute him on the spot. Brother White, this time you were able to capture Eldritch. You have made a great contribution. Just as these words were said, 6 immortals appeared beside Taoist Master White Crane out of thin air. The one who spoke was the embroidered-robed immortal that had been sent flying by Eldritch's spiritual energy. Although this Eldritch cultivation is not low, he is not as powerful as you said, the white-robed immortal said. The old immortal holding the golden coiling dragon staff shook his head. He also didn't expect to capture Eldritch so easily. The immortal dressed like a scholar frowned even more. Like the old immortal, he felt that there was something fishy about this matter. He looked at the pure white ball of light wrapping Eldritch, seemingly in disbelief. Immortal Elder, Taoist Master Ching Su, don't worry. Those captured by my fleeting sword chi will definitely not escape, Taoist Master White Crane said when he saw that the two were somewhat worried. Escape? Just as the immortals were feeling gratified that they had successfully captured Eldritch, Eldritch's laughter came from the white ball of light. Hearing this, the immortals were shocked, and Taoist Master White Crane's expression changed greatly. He pointed his finger at the white ball of light, and it immediately began to spin at high speed, making a buzzing sound. You're called White Crane, right? Eldritch's voice was heard again. Let me ask you, why didn't you kill me? I was only ordered by the heavenly court to capture you and bring you to the heavenly court for trial. As for whether I kill you or not, that's the heavenly court's business. It has nothing to do with me. Eldritch was silent for a long time in the ball of light. After a long time, his voice was heard. Then what would you do if I didn't go back to the heavenly court with you? Taoist Master White Crane frowned and didn't answer. He had already understood the meaning behind Eldritch's words. It was very simple. The sword formation in front of him couldn't trap him at all. However, he didn't understand. What ability did Eldritch have that he dared to say such a thing? I think you're really boasting shamelessly. You're now in prison and can't even protect yourself, but you still dare to speak such arrogant words? The immortal dressed in embroidered robes said with a smile, I'm not afraid to tell you that a person like you who violates the heavenly law will inevitably be slashed on the immortal slaying platform. Eldritch's laughter came from the ball of light again. You think this fleeting sword formation can trap me? What a joke. As soon as Eldritch's voice fell, a faint red light appeared in the white ball of light made of intertwined sword rays. The ball of light gradually grew bigger as the red light inside grew brighter. Not good, Taoist Master White Crane exclaimed. He's going to break the formation. As he spoke, he pointed the fleeting sword in his hand at the sword formation. A white light, as thick as a bowl, instantly gushed out from the tip of the sword and rushed directly above the sword formation. The sword formation was replenished by the sword chi of the fleeting sword, and its brilliance became even brighter. With a hissing sound, it was once again compressed to its original size. Drunken moon dance. As Eldritch chanted in a low voice, the fleeting sword formation instantly exploded with red light. Countless strange red lights shuttled back and forth in the ball of light, like streaks of red lightning flashing back and forth endlessly. The white ball of light that was rotating at high speed was instantly expanded to a size of 3 meters, and it looked like it was about to explode. Break! Eldritch yelled softly. Boom! Countless red lights broke out of the sword formation, and the fleeting sword formation that was rotating at high speed was instantly shattered by the red lights, turning into specks of stardust. Looking at Eldritch again, he floated with a devilish smile on his face. Proud lunar heavenly scripture. Taoist Master White Crane's face turned pale as he muttered to himself. He had only heard that the proud lunar heavenly scripture that Eldritch created was extraordinary, but he had never thought that it would be so powerful that it could actually break his fleeting sword formation. Ever since he had attained the Tao, no one had ever been able to do this. The remaining 6 people turned pale with fright. This Eldritch cultivation was so high that it was likely that it was not below theirs. Eldritch, are you really going to disobey? The old immortal asked. My fate is in my own hands, not in the hands of the heavens, Eldritch said calmly. My fate is in my own hands, not in the hands of the heavens, the immortal wearing a brocade robe said loudly. Since that's the case, let's attack together. I don't believe that your proud lunar heavenly scripture can deal with all of us working together. Working together? The scholarly-looking immortal frowned after hearing his words. Using numbers to bully the weak, I'm afraid that's beneath us immortals. Taoist Master Ching Su, you're wrong, the brocade-robed immortal said. We're not people of the secular world, so why should we care about these false reputations? If we don't work together, who can catch him? If we can't catch him this time and the higher-ups blame us, we won't be able to bear the consequences. Taoist Master Ching Su's expression changed after hearing this. The brocade-robed immortal was right. This eldritch cultivation was heaven-defying. Even Taoist Master White Crane, one of the 3 arts of the immortal sword, couldn't do anything to him. Taoist Master Wang is right, the old immortal said as he tapped the golden coiling dragon staff in his hand. The will of the heavens cannot be disobeyed. This time, no matter what method we use, we must escort him to the heavenly court. Immortals, hear my command. The old immortal raised the golden coiling dragon staff in his hand high up. After seeing this, the 6 immortals immediately bowed. It seemed that the golden coiling dragon staff in the old immortal's hand was not ordinary. With the coiling dragon staff in my hand, I command all of you to work together to capture the enemy. No mistakes. The old immortal was not angry, but he was imposing. Yes. After receiving the command, the immortals took out their divine weapons one after another. Then, they moved and surrounded Eldritch. Only the old immortal stood outside the circle, watching all of this with bright eyes. What? Have you finished discussing and working together? Eldritch said with a smile. The immortals did not answer. Each of them used their secret techniques to besiege Eldritch. Mystic I Soul, Taoist Master Wang, who was wearing a brocade robe, held a grudge against Eldritch for knocking him down once with his spiritual energy. Thus, he took the initiative to attack. Two streams of extremely cold spiritual energy shot out from his palms and went straight for Eldritch. The immortal, wearing a white Taoist robe, took off his treasured gourd from his waist and aimed the mouth of the gourd at Eldritch. After chanting an incantation, he slapped the bottom of the gourd. Instantly, more than 10 huge fireballs flew out from the mouth of the gourd. The flames were dazzling as they rushed towards Eldritch. The immortal, dressed like a scholar, opened his mouth, and a stream of green light flew out towards Eldritch. The remaining 3 immortals did not hesitate either. Each of them made a move. The immortal, wearing a 5-colored robe, took out a handkerchief. The handkerchief was the size of a palm and was covered in 5 colors. When it flew above Eldritch's head, it instantly turned into a 3-meter-long golden brick and smashed down. Another immortal, wearing an apricot yellow Taoist robe, waved the horsetail whisk in his hand. In an instant, countless daggers appeared under Eldritch's feet. The tips of the daggers pointed upwards and flew up rapidly. The scholar in white had just fought with Eldritch. He knew that his Jinghong sword art would not be able to catch Eldritch. Thus, he did not use the Jinghong sword this time. Instead, he took out a jade seal from his chest and aimed it at Eldritch. A red seal character flew out from the seal and turned into a 3-meter-long seal character, covering Eldritch. This seal was called the Soul-Devouring Seal. It was meticulously refined by him. The seal was 5 inches square and had a dragon and tiger button. It had a fierce sun character and was surrounded by auspicious light. Anyone who was covered by this seal would have at least one of their 3 souls and 7 spirits taken away. Even Daluo golden immortals would be hit until they were dizzy and had a headache. Chapter 3. Bright Moon in the Sky. Eldritch saw that he was surrounded and did not dare to be careless. He circulated the pure spiritual energy in his chi si and used the proud moon heavenly scripture. He stretched out both hands and instantly formed a 7 chi thick silver white protective light ball around his body. The white light ball flashed, dazzling the eyes, and made a hissing sound. Boom! The 6 killer moves collided with the protective light ball. Instantly, light splashed everywhere, deafening the deaf. Eldritch protective light ball actually blocked the combined attack of the 6 immortals. Even so, his protective light ball was forced back by 1 chi by the 6 immortal moves. Eldritch, who was inside the light ball, exerted strength with both hands and continuously used spiritual energy to fill the spiritual energy shield to protect the light ball from dissipating. The 6 immortals who surrounded him also used their immortal techniques to attack with all their might. Both sides were in a deadlock in the air. Where is the Thunder Department? The old immortal who was watching from the side saw that both sides were in a deadlock. He raised the coiling dragon staff in his hand again. Quickly summon the lightning and help me capture the enemy. The old immortal had just finished speaking when countless purple lightning bolts started to shuttle through the rolling black clouds. In an instant, they gathered into a huge lightning bolt that was as thick as a bowl. It screeched as it struck down towards Eldritch. The purple lightning arrived in a flash. The surrounding immortals saw the lightning and did not dare to be careless. They all withdrew their magic energy and retreated. Boom! The huge purple lightning bolt that was tens of zhong long hit Eldritch protective light ball. Immediately, the sound of thunder rumbled and white light scattered everywhere. Eldritch's 7 chi protective light ball instantly exploded and turned into a white cloud. Sizzle. Within the cloud, the purple lightning's power was still there. Occasionally, a purple light would appear. The immortals who had stabilized their bodies adjusted their breathing. Just now, they had joined forces to attack Eldritch and had used up a lot of their immortal energy. Phew! The brocade-robed immortal looked at the clouds in front of him and let out a long sigh. Proud Moon Heavenly Zhang is really powerful. Even with the combined strength of us 6 immortals, we can only fight him to a draw. No matter how powerful he is, he can't escape the heavenly lightning, the old immortal said. He should still be alive now. Go and capture him. We'll immediately rush back to the heavenly court to report. I'll do it, the immortal in the brocade robe said with a smile. He activated the auspicious clouds under his feet and slowly descended. The bright white cloud had yet to disperse when the immortal in the brocade robe approached and said with a smile, "How about I send you on your way?" He. As he spoke, he reached out his hand to disperse the cloud. Who would have thought that just as he brushed away the palm-sized cloud, a pair of blood-red eyes emitting red light appeared in front of him. Under his red pupils, Eldritch stared straight into his eyes with an evil smile. The immortal in the brocade robe was so shocked by the scene that he took a few steps back and almost fell off the auspicious clouds. "You dare to sneak attack me?" He. Eldritch began to chuckle. His laughter made all the immortals' scalps go numb. This Eldritch was actually unscathed under the bombardment of the heavenly lightning. However, as the white clouds around Eldritch gradually dissipated, the scene in front of them was even more shocking. At this time, Eldritch's moon-blue robe had been completely shattered by the heavenly lightning. His eyes were blood-red, and his strong white muscles were exposed as he floated in the air. What was even stranger was that on his back, a red crescent moon pattern was emitting a strange red light. Crack! Crack! Eldritch closed his eyes and began to move his neck. "Ever since I entered the Tao, I've fought countless battles, but I've never used the blood moon. Looks like I can only slay immortals today." After saying that, he continued to move his neck. Slaughter immortals? When the immortals heard these two words, they immediately felt a chill. If someone else had said this, they would have laughed their heads off. Who were they? True immortals from the upper realm. True immortals. Who would dare to say such big words? Did they not want to live anymore? However, when these words came from the mouth of the person in front of them, they could not laugh at all. 6 immortals working together, and the bombardment of the heavenly lightning did not do anything to this Eldritch. Instead, he was getting stronger and stronger. When the immortals thought of this, they all took a step back at the same time and gathered their gazes on the coiling dragon staff in the old immortal's hand. When the old immortal saw the fear in the immortals' hearts, he tapped the staff in his hand. "Eldritch, do you really want to go against the heavenly court? Do you know what the consequences of this will be? Since I can't avoid death, I might as well kill to my heart's content," Eldritch said as he stopped moving. He opened his blood-red eyes and stretched his hand towards the void. In an instant, a jar of wine appeared in his hand. Eldritch used his hand to break the seal of the yellow clay wine. Immediately, the fragrance of the wine filled the air. He first placed the jar under his nose and took a deep breath. Then, he raised his head and gulped down the wine. The immortals frowned. This Eldritch had a straightforward personality. Strictly speaking, he was not a bad person. If he did not violate the heavenly laws, he would definitely ascend in the future. Perhaps he might even become their friend. However, the heavenly laws were strict, and the heavenly mandate was hard to violate. Even if they were unwilling, they still had to act according to the heavenly laws. Satisfying. Ha. After Eldritch finished the entire jar of wine, he threw it aside and laughed towards the sky. "It's a pity that the dozens of jars of 100 flowers drunk in my cave are gone." Brother Kim benefited. After Eldritch finished speaking, he was filled with pride. He once again stretched his hand towards the void. Chua! A crescent-shaped blade appeared out of nowhere and floated above his hand. The blade was like a crescent moon. It was about a foot long, and its shape was exactly the same as a crescent moon. It was surrounded by a green light, cold and beautiful. Crescent Moon Blade, the legendary peerless godly weapon that Eldritch spent nearly 100 years to refine. When the immortals saw it, their expressions changed greatly. Even the old immortal holding the coiling dragon staff could not help but frown. "Crescent Moon," Eldritch said to the crescent moon blade that floated above his palm. "I'm afraid that today is the day that you and I part ways. After I die, you can find a new master." Wong. After hearing Eldritch's words, the crescent moon blade actually trembled. Shwa! It instantly left Eldritch's hand and revolved around Eldritch at high speed, making a buzzing sound. You have to be obedient. Don't mess around. Eldritch saw that the crescent moon blade was eager to protect its master, so he continued, I have already calculated that today is the day of my great calamity. It is unavoidable. After I kill immortals, the heavens will not let me go. You have followed me for many years, and your spirituality has already appeared. You don't have to die with me. I have already told Nye Qing and Bai Sheng to take care of you. You can leave now. Wong. The crescent moon blade made a buzzing sound in the air, swinging left and right. Are you not going to listen to me anymore? Eldritch asked calmly. The crescent moon blade stopped circling and stopped in the air. The green light on its body kept flashing. The buzzing sound did not stop, as if it was crying and complaining. Go! Eldritch shouted sternly. The crescent moon blade flew in front of Eldritch and gently slashed Eldritch's cheek with the blade. Eldritch closed his eyes and did not say a word. Wong. After the crescent moon blade circled around Eldritch 3 times, its body suddenly shone brightly. With a mournful cry, it broke through the air with a swoosh. Its long tail gradually disappeared into the horizon. Eldritch opened his eyes and stared in the direction of the crescent moon blade in a daze. After a long time, he turned around and faced the immortals. He stared at them with his blood-red eyes and said coldly, Who will die first? The immortals were shocked by the murderous aura that Eldritch suddenly emitted. They could not help but take a step back. No one dared to speak. The coiling dragon staff is here. How can you do whatever you want? The old immortal held the staff and stood in front of the immortals. Then you'll be the first. Eldritch's mouth curved. His murderous aura suddenly appeared. Red light burst out from his body, dancing in the air like raging flames. His eyes were blood red. His upper body was naked. His long hair soared to the sky, and on his back was a blood-red crescent moon. He was simply like a killing god descending to the mortal world, an Azura incarnate. Seeing this scene, the old immortal did not dare to be negligent. He heavily tapped the coiling dragon staff in his hand. Suddenly, tens of thousands of rays of golden light rose from under his feet. Tens of thousands of rays of light, thousands of auspicious clouds suddenly appeared, dazzling golden light. 2 balls of flames, one gold and one red, stood opposite each other, ready to explode at any moment. The sky and earth changed color. Fan air. Don't attack. Just as the 2 of them were about to attack, a deep voice came from the sky. Then, a purple light broke through the clouds, pierced through Yikong, and instantly arrived beside Eldritch. The purple light dispersed, and a middle-aged man in a white robe appeared in front of Eldritch. He was wearing a jade-colored yin-yang robe and a pair of golden cloud-walking shoes. His face was like the autumn moon, handsome, with a dignified appearance. His teeth were like white jade, his lips were red, and his hair was tied up in a bun. Auspicious clouds lingered around him, and purple fog spiraled around his body. His eyes were full of vitality, and he had the aura of an immortal. Master! When Eldritch saw this person, he did not say anything and dispersed the red light. With a plop, he knelt in front of the middle-aged man. Tianjizi. When the old immortal saw this middle-aged man, he muttered to himself and also withdrew his technique. When the rest of the immortals heard the old immortal's words, their faces instantly changed, and they were stunned on the spot. This person was none other than the famous loose immortal Taoist Tianji. Rumor has it that this person's cultivation had already reached the immortal realm 2,000 years ago. However, because there were too many rules in the upper realm, he was unwilling to return to the heavenly court to become an immortal, and even more unwilling to become an earth immortal. Instead, he became a free and unfettered loose immortal. Although he was a loose immortal, his status and reputation were extremely high among the immortals. How could he be Eldritch Master? The immortals' hearts were beating like drums. Old immortal, this humble immortal greets you. Taoist Tianji bowed towards the old immortal. Immeasurable deity, The old immortal hurriedly returned the greeting. When Taoist Tianji attained his Tao, he was still a little child running around the mortal realm. How could he dare to be rash? Seeing the old immortal greet this person, the rest of the immortals did not dare to be negligent, and they all bowed towards Taoist Tianji. Taoist Tianji returned the greeting. Although these immortals were not as senior as him, they were still immortals. I wonder why old immortal master has come this time? The old immortal asked. I won't hide it from old immortal master. Taoist Tianji said in a clear voice, I came specifically for this person. Saying so, he lowered his head and glanced at the kneeling Eldritch in front of him. Eldritch knelt there with his head lowered, like a little child who did something wrong, not saying a word. Old immortal master wants to save him. The old immortal asked. Not at all. Taoist Tianji waved his hand and said, How could I dare to go against the heavens? I came this time to help everyone subdue him. After the old immortal heard this, the stone in his heart fell to the ground. If Taoist Tianji really wanted to save Eldritch, even if he had the coiling dragon staff in his hand, he would not be able to stop him. The 6 immortals behind him also secretly let out a sigh of relief. Although they were immortals, their cultivation compared to Taoist Tianji in front of them was like heaven and earth. The difference was like heaven and earth. Master, Eldritch said in a small voice, I expelled you 200 years ago. Why are you still calling me master? Taoist Tianji glanced at the bowed Eldritch. A teacher for a day, a teacher for life. Eldritch said in a low voice. Huh. Taoist Tianji sighed. Get up. After hearing this, Eldritch did not move at all and continued to kneel there. 500 years ago, when you entered my sect, that old man Yin Zhongzi told me that your evil aura was too heavy and your evil aura was excessive. At that time, I saw that you were eager to pursue the Tao, had outstanding talent, and also saw that you had immortal bones, so I could not bear to cut off your immortal fate, so I accepted you as my disciple. Taoist Tianji sighed and shook his head. I originally thought that after entering my sect, you would be able to cultivate your mind and your evil aura would gradually dissipate, and in time, the righteous path would return to the true path. But I didn't think that although your Tao technique had succeeded, your Tao heart had failed, resulting in your current state. Huh. Master. Eldritch's voice was choked with sobs. This disciple is unfilial and has failed to live up to your expectations. Ha! If I had known this would happen, I would have rejected you back then and let you be an ordinary mortal. It would have been better than this. Taoist Tianji sighed. Master, can I be saved? Eldritch asked in a choked voice. Get up. Taoist Tianji said as he stretched out his hand to help Eldritch up. Now that things have come to this, even I can't help you. As the saying goes, fate is hard to go against. Today, you won't be able to escape death. After helping Eldritch up, he continued. After that strike on the immortal slaying platform, your cultivation instantly vanished, and your soul vanished into thin air. You no longer have anything to do with this world. Even if you kill an immortal today, so what? As for whether you can be saved or not, don't you know in your heart? Taoist Tianji said as he looked at him meaningfully, your cultivation is not shallow, and you already knew that this day would come. Other than killing immortals, you can do as you wish. After hearing this, Eldritch was shocked. Master was indeed his master. Nothing could escape his master's discerning eyes. I've already said what I need to say. You and I are still fated to be master and disciple. In the next life, I will naturally save you. Rest assured and go. Taoist Tianji patted Eldritch's shoulder. Master, say goodbye to my 3 senior brothers and sisters for me. Eldritch said to Taoist Tianji Z, the dead, the end of life, the living, the end of death. Life and death, life and death. The 4 of you are all cultivators. How can you still be like mortals? Taoist Tianji Z laughed. When I came, the 3 of them were clamoring to send you off, especially your senior sister Hua. She cried and begged me for a long time, but I still didn't agree. If you can't pass this trial of life and death, how can you achieve Tao? After hearing this, Eldritch slowly nodded. All right, it's time for me to go. You go. After saying this to Eldritch, Taoist Tianji Zi cupped his hands towards the old immortal not far away. Then, he turned into a purple light and disappeared into the horizon. Just as the immortals were wondering why Taoist Tianji Zi left, Eldritch turned around and looked at the immortals with a peaceful expression. He calmly said, "Stay away from me. Otherwise, all the consequences will have nothing to do with me." "Stay away from you?" The brocade-robed Taoist sneered. "At this point, you still dare to speak such arrogant words. Do as you wish," Eldritch said indifferently. The red light on his body shone again. The blood-colored crescent moon on his back shone even more brightly. Seeing this scene, the immortals immediately became alert. However, the old immortal's brows furrowed into a knot. The heavenly Tao is limitless. The great Tao is simple. The immortal Tao is vast and boundless. The human Tao reappears. Eldritch said. The red light on his body shone even brighter, turning into a red light ball 3 feet in size. Within the light ball, purple lightning shuttled back and forth. "Not good. He is going to disperse his cultivation." The old immortal suddenly said, "Quickly disperse." When the immortals heard this, they were shocked. While they were shocked, they all turned into light and dispersed. Seeing that the immortals had dispersed, the old immortal immediately waved the staff in his hand and disappeared. ZZZ. Eldritch's red light ball instantly expanded to 9 feet. Boom! The light ball instantly exploded. The earth trembled and the airwaves dispersed. The sky was filled with red light spots, sparkling and sparkling as they fell. Even the rolling black clouds in the sky were instantly dispersed by the shockwave produced by Eldritch's self-destruction. In the sky, the crescent moon reappeared. The brocade-robed Taoist was so shocked by the scene in front of him that he couldn't speak properly. He actually dispersed his cultivation. The rest of the immortals were silent. Just now, Eldritch had told them to stay away for their safety. With his cultivation, if he didn't remind them and dispersed his cultivation directly, apart from the old immortal who had the coiling dragon staff in hand, the rest of the immortals would have already dispersed their quintessential essence. This time, we didn't manage to capture Eldritch alive. I'm afraid the heavenly court will punish us. The immortal in the 5-colored robe said, "I'm afraid this is the will of the heavens." Taoist Master White Crane looked at the gradually dissipating red light spots in the sky and sighed. Chapter 4. 300 years later. Mount Qingyun. Night. The north wind whistled and snow swirled. On the rugged mountain road, a young man in his 20s walked quickly. He wore a long green robe and a felt bamboo hat. He carried a rectangular box wrapped in green cloth on his back. Although it was the middle of the night, the mountain was covered in snow. It was not difficult to see the road under his feet. According to common sense, this was the time to be sleeping in their warm beds. No one would be bored enough to come to the Great Snow Mountain in the middle of the night to pass the time. However, for him, there was an unspeakable difficulty in traveling in the middle of the night. There was only one reason, and that was the thing he was carrying on his back. The young man was called Yi Fan. He was the 68th generation great-grandson of a Yi family. When it came to the Yi family, there was no one who did not know them. The Yi family was famous for forging weapons. It was said that the ancestor of the Yi family had saved the life of the master swordsmith, Oyezi, by chance. Oyezi had nothing to repay him with, so he gave the Yi family his life's work, weapon forging manual. From then on, the Yi family rose to prominence and became famous all over the world. No matter if it was a sword, a spear, a halberd, an axe, a hook, or a fork, as long as it was a weapon made by the Yi family, it would not be an exaggeration to call it a divine weapon. Therefore, in the era of cold weapons, the Yi family was famous in Jianghu and had wealth comparable to a country. Weapons made by the Yi family were even more precious. From the emperor's imperial sword to the imperial army's weapons, everything was made by the Yi family. Even the major sects and heroes of Jianghu would be proud to have a weapon made by the Yi family. The Yi family owned 81 large weapon shops, 12 mines, 9 furnaces, and more than 100 pawnshops. The Yi family's status was even more obvious. Their highest official was the Minister of War. Therefore, whether it was the imperial government, the people of Jianghu, or even the emperor, they gave the Yi family some face. After all, it was the era of cold weapons. The quality of the army's weapons directly affected the success or failure of the war. Therefore, the emperors of each generation took good care of the Yi family. Therefore, the Yi family's official position became bigger and bigger, and they became richer and richer. It was said that the Yi family's money was so much that they could not fit it all in their house. Therefore, they directly cast gold into a dozen large balls, each weighing a few thousand pounds, and hid them underground. The Yi family's power was obvious. With such a large family business, it was only natural that there would be a head steward, who was also the head of the Yi family. The authority of the head of the Yi clan was extremely great. He was in charge of all the branches of the Yi clan and was in charge of the entire clan's affairs. All the men of the Yi clan would diligently study the art of forging weapons from the day they became sensible. They did not dare to delay for even a moment. The reason for this was because of the Yi clan's rules. The weapon forging manual mentioned earlier was only passed down to males and not females. Only the head of the Yi clan had the qualifications to study it. Back then, when the Yi clan's ancestor obtained the weapon forging manual, he passed down a section of the weapon forging manual to his 3 sons. He also made them swear that they could only pass it down to their own sons. If they didn't have sons, they would rather rot the weapon forging manual in their hearts than pass it down to outsiders. Otherwise, no matter who it was, they would use the entire clan's power to cripple the person who leaked the secret. From then on, every member of the Yi clan who obtained the weapon forging manual would be very careful, as if they were treading on thin ice. They would keep their mouths shut like a bottle of water. If their own sons were not made for it, they would definitely not pass down the weapon forging manual. Otherwise, if one of the prodigal sons leaked the weapon forging manual, what awaited them would be the death of their entire clan and the pain of losing their sons. On the contrary, if their own sons were to live up to expectations and understood the true meaning of the weapon forging manual, then they would have the possibility of becoming the head of the Yi clan, the successor of the weapon forging manual, and the ruler of the Yi clan's assets. This was because there were 2 conditions to obtain the position of head of the Yi clan. First, the person had to be a male, regardless of age. Second, this was to obtain the first place in the weapon forging manual during the ancestral worship ceremony. Every 20 years, there would be a candidate for the head of the Yi clan. When the current head of the Yi clan was old, sick, or unable to manage the affairs of the Yi clan due to other reasons, the candidate would automatically become the head of the Yi clan. He would officially have the right to manage everything in the Yi clan. Now that the Chinese New Year was approaching, according to the rules passed down by the Yi clan, the dozens of branches of the Yi clan had to send representatives back to the ancestral home far away. The first reason was to pay respects to the ancestors of the Yi clan. The second reason was to report to the head of the Yi clan about the family's business situation under the jurisdiction of their own branch, as well as to pay tribute to the head of the Yi clan. This year, Yi Fan's father, Yi Kong, had specially allowed Yi Fan to go to the ancestral home. First of all, Yi Fan was born with a proud and aloof personality. He didn't like to interact with people and spent his days either reading books or playing with weapons. However, he was already an adult. In the future, Yi Kong's branch of the Yi clan's bloodline would be led by him, and the pawnshop business would also be handed over to him. This trip to the mountains was long, so it was a good opportunity for him to gain experience. Second of all, the current head of the Yi clan, Yi Yun, doted on his grandson the most. Last year at the New Year's Eve dinner table, he had specially instructed Yi Kong that this year, Yi Fan had to make a trip to pay respects to the ancestors. Once the head of the Yi clan had spoken, who would dare to disobey? Therefore, this year, Yi Kong had specially prepared a generous gift for the old man, which was the item he was carrying on his back. He had also instructed Yi Fan not to open the box no matter what happened on the road, and that he had to personally hand it over to the old man. After hearing this, Yi Fan was curious. However, Since his father had instructed him not to look at it on the road, Yi Fan could only follow his father's instructions. The box weighed a few dozen kilograms. Yi Fan guessed that it was definitely an antique sword or something like that from the pawn shop. He was afraid that if he casually played with it on the road, it would attract the attention of others. This period of time wasn't very peaceful. There was turmoil and chaos, and bandits were rampant. It was common for people to disappear without a trace. His father's actions were reasonable. After all, Yi Fan was still young and didn't have much experience in the martial arts world. Thinking of this, Yi Fan directly avoided the wide roads and changed to a less traveled path. He also disguised himself and acted in a low-profile manner. Smoothly arriving at the ancestral home was better than anything else. Unfortunately, things didn't go as he wished. Even so, he still discovered that there were people secretly following him along the way. Moreover, it wasn't just one person, but a large group of people. This group of people was dressed like a merchant caravan. They had a caravan of camels and horses, and they were carrying bulging bags. The clanking sounds along the way were very eye-catching. Yi Fan discovered that no matter where he went, this group of people followed him from a distance. If not, they would split into two groups. One group would be in front of Yi Fan, and the other group would be behind Yi Fan. In the beginning, Yi Fan was secretly laughing. He thought that his father was being overly cautious, sending so many people to secretly escort him. However, he slowly discovered that something was wrong. The people following him weren't escorting him at all. This was because their eyes were fixed on the item on Yi Fan's back. If they were sent by his father, they definitely wouldn't stare at the item. They would just keep an eye on him. Thinking of this, Yi Fan couldn't help but smile bitterly. He had just left the house, and he was already being watched. His luck was really bad. This group of people were definitely not ordinary bandits. His father had specially instructed him not to cause any trouble on the road. The Jianghu was dangerous, and offending anyone would not benefit the Yi clan. It wasn't that the Yi clan was afraid of anyone, but the Yi clan still had to do business. Amiability led to wealth. More friends meant more roads, and more enemies meant more walls. Yi Fan didn't want to be a busybody. Since he couldn't afford to offend them, he could just hide. Thus, he simply slept in the inn during the day and quietly got up in the middle of the night to hurry on the road. However, this method didn't work. These people were really like tortoises eating a scale. They were as hard to deal with as dogs can plaster. When he slept, they also slept. When he hurried on the road, they also hurried on the road. As the saying goes, don't be afraid of thieves stealing, but be afraid of thieves remembering. Even though Yi Fan repeatedly didn't want to cause any trouble, these people didn't want to give him face. It was unavoidable that a long delay would lead to more trouble. Thus, Yi Fan decided to go all the way. He directly told them what they wanted to do, and if they were really tired of living, he would directly send them to heaven. That night, as usual, Yi Fan got up in the middle of the night and directly went up Mount Qingyun. Mount Qingyun, as the name implied, was very high. It towered into the clouds and was full of cliffs. Yi Fan walked halfway up the mountain and looked at the terrain. He felt that this place was quite flat. He wanted to end this matter here and then go back to have a good sleep so that he could continue on the road in the morning. He couldn't delay his business. Thinking of this, Yi Fan put his bag on a big rock and sat down, waiting for the group of people to come up. Chapter 5. Yi Fan was stunned. He had intended to ask them what they wanted to do, but in the end, they directly took out their weapons. Wasn't it obvious? It was a moonless and windy night, so the other party must have been impatient from following him. This time, seeing that he had come to such a remote place, they wanted to take action directly. Now it was simple. There was no need to argue with them. He could just kill them directly, and everything would be fine. Thinking of this, he got up and carried the bag on his back. He carefully looked at these people. These people were not from the Central Plains, but Japanese ninjas. The reason why he was so sure was that Yi Fan recognized this kind of Japanese sword. When he was young, his grandfather had taken him to the armory pavilion in the ancestral home to learn about all kinds of weapons. There were all kinds of weapons that Yi Fan found very strange. Yi Fan had seen this kind of sword there. His grandfather, Yi Yun, had told him about the origin of this kind of sword. This kind of sword was modified from the Tang, sword by the Japanese. It was especially suitable for slashing. Because the Japanese were short, they needed to hold the sword with both hands. This could increase the power of slashing. Moreover, the body of the sword was generally longer, so it could increase the killing range. This kind of sword was made of steel that had been forged countless times. It was excellent in both toughness and hardness. In particular, this kind of sword was very sharp. At that time, his grandfather had demonstrated it to Yi Fan. Holding the sword with one hand, he had cut off a corner of the stone block with just a light slash. Therefore, Yi Fan had a very deep impression of this kind of sword. Yi Fan could tell that these people in front of him were not ordinary people. From their uniform movements and neat movements, he could tell that they were the famous Japanese ninjas. They were special personnel who had been trained by special organizations in Japan. They were good at assassination and espionage. They had their own independent organization and took orders from the government at that time. Their main task was to inquire about information for the king, secretly plan, collect intelligence, assassinate, sabotage, and other things that could not be seen. Later, they slowly served the nobles and some businessmen at that time. To put it bluntly, they were no different from an assassin organization. Anyone with money could hire them. They were strict in their work and never dragged their feet. In their eyes, there was no such thing as good or evil. They only had one goal, and that was to complete the mission. The second was that they had no dignity. In the case that they couldn't beat the other party, they would immediately run away, without considering whether it was embarrassing or not. The third was that they couldn't use ninjutsu at will, except when performing a mission or when their lives were at stake. They usually concealed their identity and were no different from ordinary people. After receiving a mission, they would immediately change their identity and become a ninja who killed without batting an eyelid. The fourth was that once they fell into the enemy's hands, they would rather die than reveal any information about their master. Generally, they would choose to commit suicide after falling into the enemy's hands. They are divided into jounin, chunin, and genin. Except for special and important missions, those who performed the mission were all genin, or chunin-led genin, to perform the mission. Their weapons were also very complicated. They would choose their weapons according to the specific situation of the mission. Their main weapons were Japanese swords, boomerangs, poison needles, poison, smoke balls, bows, and other common weapons. They also had some other dirty weapons. For example, there was a kind of four-edged nail with four edges. No matter how it was placed, there would always be one edge facing up. When it was used, it could be sprinkled on the road. It could be dipped in poison for assassination, and it could also be used to obstruct the advance. It could also be used to cover the rear when escaping. The 8 ninjas in front of him took advantage of the terrain to surround Yi Fan. Moreover, they didn't just surround him in one circle, but in 2 circles, with 4 ninjas on each side. After the 8 ninjas surrounded Yi Fan, they started to turn around without saying anything. The inner circle turned clockwise, and the outer circle turned counterclockwise. Their black shadows were everywhere, and their speed was extremely fast. Yi Fan felt dizzy, so he simply closed his eyes and calmed down. He wanted to see what tricks they could play. He had heard that Japanese ninjas were very powerful, but Yi Fan didn't know how powerful they were. Today, he wanted to see for himself what kind of tricks they could play. Just as Yi Fan closed his eyes, the 8 ninjas made their move at the same time. Each of them launched their own attacks. The 4 ninjas in the inner circle suddenly used their long blades to slash at Yi Fan. The ninjas in the outer circle swung their arms and threw a dozen boomerangs into the space between the 4 ninjas in the inner circle. After throwing the boomerangs, the 4 ninjas in the outer circle did not stop at all. They tapped the ground with the tips of their feet and flew into the air. They raised their battle blades high up in the air and slashed at Yi Fan from the air. This move was insidious and vicious. If one could defend against the swords, one couldn't defend against the boomerangs. And if one could defend against the boomerangs, one couldn't defend against the swords. Yi Fan was blocked from all directions like a birdcage. It could be said that there was no way for him to escape. At this moment, Yi Fan had already heard the sound of something breaking through the air. He opened his eyes and saw that the inner circle was filled with blade shadows while the outer circle was filled with cold stars. They were all rushing towards Yi Fan. Yi Fan wanted to jump out of the encirclement, but he was helpless as his upper body was also sealed. Yi Fan had no other choice. It seemed that he had underestimated these ninjas. If it was anyone else who encountered this move, they would definitely be waiting for death. But then again, that was someone else. Yi Fan wasn't someone else. He was Yi Yun's eldest son and eldest grandson, Yi Kong's only son. Yi Kong had passed down all his skills to Yi Fan since he was young, and he had also instructed him to never show off in front of others. Yi Fan was also very hardworking. He was originally talented and intelligent, and with his hard work, his strength was already on par with the top experts in Jianghu. 8 shining Japanese swords and more than a dozen glittering cross-shaped darts arrived in an instant. Yi Fan's mouth curved, and a murderous intent appeared. He stretched out his hand and pulled out the soft sword from his waist. For a moment, white light flourished, and the cold air was oppressive. Yi Fan's feet left the ground, and he turned a circle in the air. The man moved with the sword, and the sword moved with the man. A waterfall-like brilliance instantly engulfed the 8 ninjas. After a few sounds of metal colliding, there was no more movement. When the brilliance receded, the 8 ninjas were all lying on the ground, and the Japanese swords in their hands were all broken in two. Every ninja's throat was slit. What was surprising was that although their throats were slit, there wasn't a trace of blood. There was only a red mark on the wound. After landing on the ground, Yi Fan tied the soft sword back to his waist. This soft sword was a treasure. It was given to him by his father on his 18th birthday. The name of the sword was Snake Shadow. His father, Yi Kong, had spent an entire year to personally forge it from a piece of cold iron bought from a pawn shop. The treasured sword was 3 feet and 3 inches long, and it was cold to the touch. The whole body was enveloped in brilliance, and the cold air was oppressive. The body of the sword was flexible, and the blade was sharp. The hilt was carved with a silver snake spitting out its tongue. The eyes of the silver snake were inlaid with 2 emeralds, which were green and lustrous. The blood-red tongue attached to the hilt was also carved with precious rubies. The whole silver snake was vivid and lifelike, and it meandered around the hilt. It was exceptionally gorgeous. At that time, Yi Kong had told him that the material to forge this treasured sword could only be encountered by chance. This cold iron was not an ordinary cold iron. This was cold iron found in the polar regions. Judging from the cold air, it was at least several hundred years old. When he bought this cold iron, he had spent a lot of money. He had spent a total of 500 taels of gold and 1,000 taels of silver to get this treasure. According to the person who came to the pawn shop to pawn this treasure was brought out from the Song Imperial Palace by his ancestors. It was a tribute from the Luocha country. During the summer, it was placed in the main hall to relieve the heat. It was said that it was wrapped in 3 layers of sandalwood before it could be placed in the main hall. Even so, from the outside, it looked no different from a big block of ice. After it was placed in the main hall, it immediately became incomparably cool. If it wasn't wrapped in sandalwood, it would have become winter in the main hall. Later on, when the Great Song Dynasty was destroyed, this item could be taken out of the palace. Yi Kong saw that Yi Fan was already an adult. As a family of weaponsmiths, it was time for him to have a good weapon. Therefore, he forged the cold iron into a treasured sword. Forging cold iron into a treasured sword was extremely difficult. Because it was cold iron, it could not be calcined. But then again, calcination could not do anything to the cold iron. It had to be cold forged. In order to seal the cold air and not let it go out of control and affect the sword wielder, Yi Kong specially added other materials to forge the Snake Shadow. When Yi Kong gave this sword to Yi Fan, he had warned him that this sword had many mysteries. In the future, when his cultivation reached a certain level, he would understand them. Yi Fan wrapped the treasured sword around his waist again. He carried the backpack and prepared to return to the inn. During this period of time, he slept during the day and traveled at night, causing his yin and yang to be reversed. Now that the problem was solved, he would go back and have a good sleep. Tomorrow, he would not be in a hurry to travel. He would take a bath, eat a good meal, rest, and continue the journey the day after tomorrow. If everything went smoothly, he would reach the Yi clan's ancestral residence the night after tomorrow. Yi Fan thought as he turned around. When he inadvertently raised his head, the scene in front of him made him suck in a breath of cold air. There were two people standing in front of him. One had his hands behind his back, a white veil on his face, and his clothes were as white as snow. Unexpectedly, he was also carrying a rectangular wooden box on his back. However, the box was very large and was not wrapped in cloth. The other person was wearing a black robe, and a wide hat hung down to his eyes. The black robe was embroidered with a few unknown blood-red flowers. Chapter 6. Yi Fan began to break out in a cold sweat. He swallowed his saliva. This was the first time in more than 20 years that he felt afraid. If these two people were in cahoots with those people from before, he would definitely not be able to survive today. With their ghost-like movement techniques, it would only take a moment for them to finish him off. Without waiting for Yi Fan to recover, the white-clothed person opened his mouth. The sword at his waist is not ordinary, the white-clothed person said. The voice was ethereal and mellow. It was a woman's voice. The black-clothed person smiled. That sword is yours, but the one on his back is mine. His Chinese was very stiff, and his voice was old and hoarse. I'm not interested in other people's things. But let me remind you, with your current cultivation, you are still unable to control it. The white-clothed person said, I would like to try. The black-clothed person smiled greedily. Yi Fan could not help but be angry after hearing this. These two people were too arrogant, actually discussing how to divide the spoils in front of him. They did not put him in their eyes at all. Although these two people looked like experts, he was not someone to be trifled with either. He calmed himself down. The most taboo when facing an enemy was to panic. No matter what kind of opponent he met, the first thing he had to do was not panic. No matter how strong an expert was, there would be a flaw, and the premise to find the opponent's flaw was to be calm. Yi Fan took a few deep breaths, slowly calming himself down, carefully observing the other party's every move, hoping to find a flaw. At this moment, the man in white moved. With a swoosh, a white shadow instantly swept past Yi Fan's side. The strong wind that swept across the snowy ground, leaving behind a long and deep mark. When Yi Fan reacted, the white-clothed person had already squatted down to check the ninja's wounds. After seeing this, Yi Fan instantly felt his scalp tingle. The confidence that he had just recovered was instantly extinguished like a bonfire that was suddenly doused with cold water. The white-clothed person's terrifying move was something that he had never even heard of, let alone seen. What kind of movement technique was so powerful? He did not even see the white-clothed person's movements arriving in an instant. This was simply no different from an immortal. It seemed like he could only fight to the death today, but the chances of winning were not high. In this situation, even if he ran, he wouldn't be able to outrun them, let alone fight. At this moment, Yi Fan suddenly felt like he was a piece of meat on a chopping board, ready to be cut up. Could it be that today was the day of his death? He used cold air. When the wound was cut open, the blood was frozen. The man in white stood up and said slowly, "So that's how it is. Looks like today's trip was not in vain. Ha ha ha." The black-robed man smiled and waved at Yi Fan. Come. Let me see how strong your cold chi is. You can actually kill 8 of my subordinates in one move." Yi Fan did not answer. It seemed that the black-robed man was the leader of the 8 ninjas. To be able to sit on the same level as the white-robed man, his strength should not be below the white-robed man. Since he had killed 8 of his subordinates, this black-robed man would definitely avenge them. Today, I forgot to look at the almanac when I went out. Unexpectedly, I met 2 top Japanese masters at the same time. If things go wrong, my life will be in the hands of this black-robed man. What a pity for my snake shadow sword and the thing on my back. According to the black-robed man's words, the thing in the box on my back is also a weapon. Moreover, its power is not below the snake shadow sword. Thinking that these two treasures will not be surnamed Yi soon, Yi Fan felt like a knife was being twisted in his heart. There is no other way. I can only fight. Even if I die, I can't lose face for the Yi clan. Yi Fan was not nervous when he thought of this. He reached out and pulled out the sword. The snake's shadow sword flew out like a white rainbow, shining brightly. He closed his eyes and held the sword with one hand, standing against the wind. In an instant, Yi Fan's body was surrounded by a white fog, and the cold air lingered around him. This move was his killing move, his life-saving move. He gave it a name, Heaven Waterfall. This was because every time he pushed the snake's shadow sword to the limit, the cold air around him would pour down like a waterfall. Ever since his father, Yi Kong, told him that the snake's shadow sword still had many secrets, Yi Fan studied the snake's shadow sword all day long. It took him 5 years to gradually understand the mystery of releasing the snake shadow sword's cold air. The principle of this move, Heaven Waterfall, was very simple. It was to guide the cold air of the snake shadow sword to protect one's body, and then use the snake shadow sword's cold air to defeat the opponent. Although the move was simple, it was very difficult to practice. Yi Fan clearly remembered that when he first started guiding the cold air to protect his body, he was unable to withstand the cold air of the snake shadow sword. He would often faint from the cold. If not for Yi Kong discovering that the temperature was not right and arriving in time, Yi Fan would have been frozen to death several times over. Later on, Yi Fan began to pay attention to his internal energy cultivation. It took him 2 years to gradually adapt to the cold air of the snake shadow sword. But even so, his body could only withstand 20% of the cold air of the snake shadow sword. If it went any higher, his body would be frozen stiff. However, 20% of the cold air was enough to block the attacks of ordinary swords and sabers. Ordinary swords and sabers could not even get close to the body. Before they could even get close, they would already be wrapped up by the cold air. If the opponent was wrapped up by the cold air, not only would the person not be able to withstand it, even the weapon would not be able to withstand it. The weapon would become very weak, and even a wooden stick would be able to break it, not to mention the snake shadow sword. In addition, Yi Fan spent all day practicing the various sword manuals that his father, Yi Kong, had collected. The combination of the sword move and the cold air was seamless. This sword move could be said to be both offensive and defensive. Yi Fan would not use this move lightly. Every day, he practiced to adapt to the cold air of the snake shadow sword as much as possible. He hoped that one day, he would be able to release 100% of the cold air of the snake shadow sword. He would be able to completely master the cold air of the snake shadow sword. However, today he had encountered 2 experts among experts. Yi Fan could only use this trump card. This was because the opponent's strength was too strong. He directly released 20% of the cold air. His body began to feel a slight numbness. At the same time, the cold air around him began to pour down like a waterfall. In the blink of an eye, the ground under Yi Fan's feet was covered in a hazy white mist. Yi Fan's eyes, eyebrows, beard, hands, and even his clothes were covered in a thick layer of white frost. The scene in front of him shocked the black-clothed man. He looked at the white-clothed man. The white-clothed man looked calm, but his expression was somewhat grave. To have such a cultivation at such a young age, it can be considered not easy. How about this? Leave the treasured sword in your hand and the things on your back, and I will let you live. The black-clothed man said. Yi Fan did not reply. He could not waste time here. If he continued to waste time here, his body would be frozen solid. Before his body was frozen solid, he had to get rid of this black-clothed man. The white-clothed man said that he was not interested in other people's things. He should not make things difficult for him. Thinking of this, Yi Fan shook the snake's shadow sword in his hand. The snake's shadow sword shone with a bright white light. Immediately after, Yi Fan exerted strength in his legs and rushed towards the black-clothed man with a flash of light. The white light that filled the sky was like a waterfall that engulfed the black-clothed man. This time, Yi Fan used all his strength. His speed was like an arrow that left the bow. In an instant, he was in front of the black-clothed man. Before he arrived, the cold air rushed towards him. The black-clothed man did not panic. He was calm and composed, as if nothing had happened. The white light arrived in an instant. Just as Yi Fan's snake shadow sword was about to touch him, the black-clothed man moved. In an instant, he used his right index finger and middle finger to clamp down on the cold snake shadow sword in Yi Fan's hand. Such a domineering move was actually neutralized by the other party with just a flick of his fingers. Yi Fan did not expect that the skill that he was so proud of was like scratching an itch through a boot to the other party. Yi Fan wanted to pull the sword out, but the black-clothed man's fingers were like a pair of fire tongs. No matter how much strength Yi Fan used, he could not pull the sword out even an inch. The black-clothed man laughed. His hoarse laughter was like the laughter of a night owl. It was very strange in the middle of the night. No matter how you looked at this black-clothed man, he looked like a ghost. Coupled with his laughter, he looked like a devil that had climbed up from the 18th level of hell. However, just as the black-clothed man was toying with Yi Fan like an old cat toying with a little mouse, the black-clothed man realized that Yi Fan was also laughing. Moreover, his laughter was so sinister that he was stunned for a moment. While the black-clothed man was in a daze, Yi Fan took advantage of the black-clothed man's moment to curve the corners of his mouth. He immediately increased the cold chi of the snake shadow sword to 30%. At this moment, the cold chi of the snake shadow sword that the black-clothed man was clamping between his fingers instantly exploded, and a white light flashed. Before the black-clothed man could react, the white light that burst forth from the snake shadow sword enveloped the two of them. The cold chi instantly enveloped the two of them. Although most of the cold chi was poured onto the black-clothed man by Yi Fan. Even so, Yi Fan himself was frozen stiff by the cold chi. He used his long sword to support himself on the ground and tried to force himself to not fall. Looking at the black-clothed man again, Yi Fan laughed. He laughed like a child. At this moment, the black-clothed man's lips were blue from the cold. He was trembling slightly. He had been completely frozen by the cold chi of the snake shadow sword. His entire body was wrapped in a thick layer of ice. Then, with a thud, he fell straight to the ground. His face had an expression of "this is impossible." Even his hand was still in the position of clamping the snake shadow sword. If Yi Fan was not frozen stiff, he would definitely be laughing. If he was holding a long tobacco pipe in his hand, TSK. The more Yi Fan thought about it, the more he wanted to laugh. With a puff, he did not laugh out loud. Instead, he spat out a large mouthful of blood. Chapter 7. When Yi Fan opened his eyes again, the sky was already bright. He rubbed his sleepy eyes and found that he was actually lying in a cave. There was a soft layer of firewood under him, and there was a bonfire beside him. The fire was burning fiercely, and the firewood was crackling. A wild rabbit was roasting on the fire, and the aroma of the meat filled the air. What's going on? Yi Fan was startled awake. When he woke up, the first thing he did was check his things. Fortunately, the snake shadow sword and the wooden box were placed beside him. Nothing was missing. Phew! Yi Fan let out a long breath. It seemed that his life was not meant to end here. Someone had saved him. At this time, there was no one else in the cave besides him. Since his savior was not here, then it was more important for him to hurry, Yi Fan thought to himself. He did not care about the soreness in his body and forced himself to stand up. He wrapped the snake shadow sword around his waist and tried to carry the wooden box on his back. Unfortunately, his body was so weak that even standing up was difficult, not to mention carrying a few dozen pounds of things on his back. Yi Fan sighed and placed the wooden box on the ground again. He sat by the bonfire and rested while looking around the cave. This cave was U-shaped and very spacious. It was a natural shelter. It was probably a kind hunter who passed by and saw that he was frozen, so he brought him to this cave to keep him warm. Yi Fan thought to himself, as for that white-clothed woman, she must have brought the black-robed freak down the mountain. Yi Fan was thinking when he suddenly raised his head. The scene in front of him shocked him so much that he almost fell to the ground. Speak of the devil. At this time, the white-clothed woman was standing less than 3 meters away from him, looking at him. When Yi Fan saw the white-clothed woman in front of him, he hurriedly stood up. But because he stood up too quickly, the soreness in his body made Yi Fan, who had just stood up, sit down again. It's over, Yi Fan thought to himself. It seemed that he would not be able to escape this calamity. This woman definitely did not come with good intentions. She was most likely here to take revenge for the black-robed freak. Yi Fan thought as he forced himself to stand up slowly. He pulled out the snake's shadow sword again and steadied himself. He had thought it through. If the white-robed man attacked him, he would completely release the cold chi of the snake's shadow sword and fight to the death, perishing together with him. You'd better save your strength for the journey, the woman in white said to Yi Fan. If I wanted to kill you, I wouldn't even need to do it myself. The wild wolves and the weather outside can take your life. The woman in white said as she slowly walked to the fire and sat down. This was a gesture without any hostility. Yi Fan understood that he was saved by this woman. It seemed that this woman did not want to kill him, but since she was in cahoots with the black-robed man, why did she save him? Could it be that there was something else going on? Thinking of this, Yi Fan's tense nerves gradually relaxed. While looking at the masked woman with a puzzled expression, he sat back down on the ground. This time he was careful and did not put the snake's shadow sword back at his waist. Instead, he placed it by his side. This way, if the woman in white made any moves, he would be able to reach out and grab the sword. He would not be flustered. The woman in white seemed to understand Yi Fan's thoughts. Her pair of beautiful eyes rolled at Yi Fan. With a cold snort, she took the roasted rabbit from the fire and sniffed it. Then she tore it in half and threw it to Yi Fan. After receiving the roasted rabbit, Yi Fan felt that his stomach was so hungry that his chest was sticking to his back. He looked at the woman in white in front of him and then looked at the fragrant roasted rabbit in his hand. His heart was full of doubts. Since this woman did not kill him and instead saved him, she should not have poisoned the food. Yi Fan thought to himself, who cares? I'll eat until I recover my strength. With my current condition, not to mention fighting, even walking down the mountain would be a problem. Besides, who knew if the black-robed man was dead or not? If he recovered and came here to take revenge, what would he do? At that time, he would not have any strength left. How could he fight him? Thinking of this, Yi Fan did not care about his table manners. He began to wolf down the roasted rabbit. The woman in white's cooking skills were not bad. The simple roasted rabbit was crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. The whole body was golden yellow. Half of the wild hare was finished by Yi Fan in just a short while. Firstly, he was hungry. He had not eaten a single drop of water since he woke up in the middle of the night. Secondly, the wild hare roasted by this woman was simply too delicious. Since he was young, he had eaten all kinds of delicacies and tasted all kinds of delicacies. However, compared to the wild hare in his hand, those delicacies were simply tasteless. Yi Fan sucked his fingers, still not satisfied. Seeing this, the woman in white threw the remaining half to Yi Fan. Yi Fan was stunned. He said a word of thanks and lowered his head to busy himself again. After he finished eating the rabbit meat, Yi Fan wiped his mouth and leaned heavily against the stone wall. He could feel that his strength was quickly recovering. Fortunately, his body was not too badly affected by the cold air from the snake's shadow sword. After resting for a while, he would be able to leave the mountain. He raised his head to look at the woman in white. This woman had been looking at him while he was eating. She stared at him without blinking, as if she was thinking of something. "Why aren't you eating?" Yi Fan asked, feeling embarrassed from being stared at by her. "You need to quickly recover your strength. There is still a fierce battle waiting for you." The woman in white said in a neutral tone. "Fierce battle? With who?" Yi Fan hurriedly asked. Could it be the black-robed man? Yi Fan suddenly thought that the black-robed man might be here. Thinking of this, he quickly stood up and held the snake's shadow sword in his hand. He looked around nervously, but he did not see the black-robed man's figure. "He's nearby?" Yi Fan nervously asked the woman in white. "Here he is," said the woman in white. "I have brought him into this cave." "What? Here?" Yi Fan held the snake's shadow sword and looked around as if he was facing a great enemy. "Where is he?" "Here, right here," the woman in white said as she pointed at the fire with the wooden stick in her hand. "He was too frozen by your cold air. I buried him under the fire. Otherwise, he would not be able to recover in a short time." "Fire! Fire! Down! Down there!" Yifan stuttered as he looked at the burning bonfire and swallowed his saliva. He had seen people use mud to cover an entire chicken and bury it under the fire to roast it. It seemed to be called beggar's chicken, but he had never seen a living person being buried under the fire to roast it. He even wondered if the black-robed man would be roasted until he was charred on the outside and tender on the inside, steaming hot, just like the hair this woman roasted. Yifan raised his head and looked at the calm woman in white. He muttered in his heart, "This woman really knows how to play with fire. She roasts a hair and roasts a person. Believe me, he won't be frozen by you a second time. Your physical strength should have recovered by now. Pack up and set off quickly. Remember, you must take the main road and not the small roads. When you get home, pass the thing on your back to your family. That thing might be able to save your family's fate." When Yifan heard the woman in white's words, he was momentarily stunned. He had too many questions that he did not understand. From her tone, it seemed that something big was going to happen in the Yi family. What kind of big thing was going to happen? How could it affect the fate of the family? Was this a joke? It was close to the Spring Festival, so the various branches of the Yi family would send experts to the Yi family's ancestral home. These people were all powerful and were all first-class experts. Besides, with the head of the family, Yi Yun, overseeing the situation, what could happen? He was an expert among experts, the successor of the weaponsmith manual. His cultivation had reached the peak of perfection, and the snow thread sword in his hand was unrivaled. If the weapons forged by the Yi family were divine weapons, then the snow thread sword was a divine weapon among divine weapons, a divine weapon among divine weapons. It was said that after Yi Yun inherited the weaponsmith manual, it took him 3 years to forge the divine weapon. On the day the sword was forged, a white light burst out from the sword furnace, which lasted for 3 days. Yi Yun fasted, took a bath, burned incense, and prayed before taking the sword out of the furnace. The sword was snow-white and radiated a bright light. What was even more amazing was that the sword was born with sword chi. When a strand of hair floated towards the snow thread sword, it was cut into 2 before it even touched the sword. Yi Yun saw that the sword was as bright as the sun after the snow, so he named it Snow Thread. Yifan had never seen his grandfather Yi Yun's cultivation. He only knew that although Yi Yun was over 50 years old, he looked like he was around 40 years old. He did not look like an old man at all. Yifan had also never seen the true appearance of the Snow Thread sword because the sword was enshrined in the main hall of the ancestral home. Other than Yi Yun, no one else could touch it. If someone else told Yifan that the Yi family was about to meet a great disaster, he would definitely not care. What kind of status did the Yi family have? They were a famous family of the great Ming dynasty. Whether it was the court officials or the bandits, who would not be respectful to them. Even the current emperor would have to give the Yi family some face. However, if these words came from the mouth of this woman in white who moved like a ghost, he had no choice but to believe them. Who are you people? Why did you save me? What kind of disaster will the Yi family encounter? If the Yi family has a fierce battle, who is the opponent? Yifan asked. He did not ask why the black-robed man wanted to be his enemy. The reason was very simple. The black-robed man wanted his things. You already know enough. Don't ask anymore. Pack up and quickly leave. When this person wakes up, I will not stop him. The white-clothed woman said. Since the other party did not want to say, Yifan did not ask anymore. No matter how many questions he had to quickly return to the ancestral home and tell Yi Yun this news. He had to make preparations in advance. Yifan thought as he put away the snake's shadow sword, carried the wooden chest, and turned to leave. Just as he walked out of the cave, Yifan turned around and returned to the cave. The white-clothed woman was quietly sitting by the fire. She was constantly fiddling with the fire. She seemed to have a lot on her mind. Why did you come back? The white-clothed woman asked without even raising her head. No matter what, you saved my life. I can't thank you enough. My name is Yifan. May I know my benefactor's name? Yi Fan bowed with his hands clasped in front of him. He knew that the white-clothed woman in front of him was in cahoots with the black-robed man. However, she had saved his life and even warned him that the Yi family was in trouble. Even though Yi Fan did not know why she was doing this, she was still his savior after all. There was no doubt about that. The white-clothed woman frowned and turned to stare at Yi Fan. After a long time, she said, "Fujiwara no Chico." Fujiwara no Chico? Is she really Japanese? Yi Fan thought to himself as he bowed again. Yi Fan will remember my benefactor's name. I will repay you in the future. After saying that, he turned around to leave. Wait, the white-clothed woman called out to Yi Fan. Benefactor, is there anything else? Yi Fan turned around and replied, Take this first. It's useful to you. The white-clothed woman took out something from her pocket and handed it to Yi Fan. When Yi Fan took it with both hands, he accidentally touched the woman's hand. He felt that her skin was as smooth as ice and her bones were as soft as jade. The white-clothed woman quickly retracted her hand. Although she was wearing a veil, judging from the exposed skin on her face, she must be blushing. Yi Fan also felt awkward. He retracted his gaze and looked at the item in his hand. It was a red pendant. It was in the shape of a soaring phoenix. It was crystal clear. Perhaps it was because the white-clothed woman kept it close to her body. It felt warm to the touch and emitted a woman's fragrance. Yi Fan did not know why the white-clothed woman gave him this item. This was something that only couples would give to each other. Could it be that this woman likes me? With that thought in mind, Yi Fan raised his head and looked at the white-clothed woman. Wear it when you're facing an enemy. It has its uses, the white-clothed woman said coldly. This is too precious. This is too precious. How can I? I'm lending it to you, not giving it to you. After this calamity, I'll come and take it back. The white-clothed woman interrupted Yi Fan. Thank you, benefactor. Yi Fan has a presumptuous request. I hope that Senior Chico can fulfill it. Yi Fan bowed. What presumptuous request? He just wanted to see the woman's true face. Speak, the white-clothed woman said. Senior Chico is Yi Fan's benefactor. Although I know your name, I haven't seen your true face. In order to repay your kindness in the future, can you remove your veil? Before Yi Fan could finish his sentence, he felt a strong gust of wind hit him in the face. His body was blown away by this strong gust of wind. With a thud, he landed outside the cave. Chapter 8. When Yi Fan arrived at the foot of Mount Qingyun, it was almost noon. On the way down, he felt like he was in a dream. It was so unreal, but the jade pendant in his hand clearly told him that all this was not an illusion. At this time, his physical strength had recovered to 80%. If he hurried through the night, he could reach the ancestral home tomorrow morning. But Yi Fan did not dare to be careless. He had to return to the ancestral home as soon as possible and tell Yi Yun everything. Now he could not show his face in public. If he encountered a Japanese master again, he would not be so lucky. Thinking of this, he hired a carriage from the roadside, threw an ingot to coachman, and got into the carriage. After telling coachman the destination, Yi Fan told coachman that he could only take the main road. If he reached the ancestral home before dinner, he would be rewarded. At that time, an ingot was not a small number. It could meet the annual expenses of a family of 3. When the coachman saw the windfall, his eyes immediately lit up. Usually, a few coins of silver was enough for him to work for 3 months. Now that he could earn so much money so easily, he naturally worked hard to serve them. He cracked the whip loudly, and the carriage almost flew up from the ground. Fortunately, they took the main road. If they took the small roads, the carriage would definitely overturn, Yi Fan thought. He did not dare to sleep in the carriage. He had to be on guard against someone blocking the road. It should be known that Japanese ninjas were best at tracking and assassination. It would be easy for them to follow him. But fortunately, the journey was surprisingly smooth. Before the sun went down, he arrived at the ancestral home of the Yi family. It was at the foot of the Eagle's Distress Peak. Yi Fan looked at the ancestral home halfway up the mountain and let out a long breath. The big stone in his heart finally fell to the ground. It seemed that Fujiwara no Chico did not lie to him. It was really smooth to take the main road. Yifan gave Coachman 5 taels of silver and told him to go back the way he came. He could not take the small roads. Coachman was a little puzzled. He asked Yifan why. Yifan told him that there were bandits on the small roads and that he had just escaped from death. Coachman was scared and broke out in a cold sweat. He thanked him profusely and left. He did this for Coachman's good and for his own good. Once Coachman went back through the small roads, the ninjas lying in ambush on the road would force him to give him information. He would certainly die, and his whereabouts would be exposed. He watched Coachman return from the main road, and then turned around and walked to the top of the Eagle's Distress Peak. Eagle's Distress Peak was a peak. The mountain peak towered into the clouds. It was said that no one had ever reached the peak. The peak was covered in snow all year round, and the air was extremely thin. Ordinary people could not reach it. The Yi clan's ancestral home was built halfway up the Eagle's Distress Peak. When the Yi clan chose the location for their ancestral home, they had specially chosen this place. First, it was sparsely populated with lush vegetation. The Yi clan liked the quietness here. Second, it was surrounded by steep cliffs. It was easy to defend and hard to attack. There was only one winding path up the mountain. The Yi clan controlled the military equipment of the imperial court. Naturally, there were many enemy countries that sent assassins to assassinate the Yi clan. Therefore, the Yi clan chose this place to build their ancestral home. The ancestral home was built with a grand and majestic aura. It covered an area of more than 10 mu and was completely built with hard granite. Not only was it very sturdy, it was also filled with mechanisms. Apart from the Yi clan, no one knew how to break the mechanisms. It was said that in order to test the power of the mechanism, the Yi family had opened the main gate of the ancestral house wide open, and then used a crossbow to shoot 3 sharp arrows made of fine steel into the gate. In the end, the moment the arrows flew into the courtyard, there were a few clinking sounds, and the arrows broke into several pieces. What was even more mysterious was that the Yi clan had secretly created 33 bronze men. The bronze men were the size of real people. They were driven by internal mechanisms. At night, the Yi clan would release these 33 bronze men to patrol the night. Of course, this was only a legend. Legends were always more unimaginable. Yifan had never seen any bronze men in his life. He had seen mechanisms, but they were only secret doors and tunnels. Although the ancestral home was built halfway up the mountain was high and the forest was dense. When Yifan arrived at the ancestral home's entrance, the sun had already set. He knocked on the heavy iron door and waited for someone to open it for him. This iron door was the first door to enter the ancestral home. The door was made of pure iron that was more than 5 inches thick. The interlayer in the middle was made of extremely strong magnets. This way, if someone entered the ancestral home with a sharp weapon, they would be attracted by the door and reveal themselves on the spot. According to the Yi clan's rules, apart from the Yi clan, no one was allowed to bring any weapons into the ancestral home. The weapons had to be temporarily kept by the gatekeeper. After a while, the door was opened. An old man wearing a long gown walked out. The person who came was none other than the Yi clan's gatekeeper, Huang Shoui. Huang Shoui was the only person with a different surname in the Yi clan's ancestral home. Back then, before Yi Yun became the successor of the Yi clan, he had coincidentally saved this person. At that time, he was surrounded by more than 10 soldiers and was in a critical situation. Yi Yun happened to pass by at that time. He saw that this person was righteous and had Buffon skills. He was fearless in the face of more than 10 soldiers and was unafraid of death. Yi Yunjai was a kind-hearted person, so his heart was moved. He revealed his identity as a member of the Yi clan and claimed that he would personally interrogate him. The Yi clan was powerful, and the soldiers did not dare to offend the Yi clan. They could only watch as Yi Yun took this person away. Yi Yun saw that this person was seriously injured and brought him to the medical hall for treatment. After treating this person's injuries, Yi Yun gave him 50 taels of fine silver and told him to go far away and find a way to survive. This person saw that Yi Yun was righteous and compassionate, so he immediately knelt before Yi Yun and begged Yi Yun to take him in. He was willing to be an ox or a horse to repay Yi Yun. Yi Yun asked about this person's background and learned that his surname was Huang Shui and that he was from Jiangxi. He lost his parents when he was young and had no one to rely on. Later, he was taken in by the White Lotus School's instructor who taught him martial arts. During an assassination mission, the two of them were betrayed by a traitor and were surrounded. In an emergency, his master risked his life to open a bloody path and sent him out. His master was also seriously injured in order to protect him. He was like a lamp that had run out of oil and passed away a few days later. In order to avenge his master, Huang Shui investigated openly and secretly and finally found the traitor's whereabouts. Because the traitor had made a meritorious report, he was given the title of Qianhu by the imperial court. After discovering the traitor's whereabouts, Huang Shui heard the news and went straight to the traitor's residence that very night. While the traitor was indulging in wine and women, he personally ended his life. Later, the imperial court was furious and sent people everywhere to capture him. Finally, they found him in a secluded mountain and sent out a large number of elite soldiers to surround and suppress him, claiming that they wanted to capture him alive. Huang Shui fought and ran with his martial arts, but there were too many Ming soldiers. They also sent a divine archer to specifically shoot at his thigh in order to capture him alive. In the end, he was completely outnumbered and was surrounded. Yi Yun saw that he was a man of temperament, and he just happened to lack a trustworthy follower, so he kept him by his side to do things. In order to prevent future troubles, Yi Yun even made a badly mutilated corpse and put it in Huang Shui's clothes before handing it over to the magistrate. He said that this person could not withstand the torture and killed himself by biting his tongue. Only then was he able to muddle through and save Huang Shui's life. Ever since Huang Shui followed Yi Yun, he was loyal and devoted. He did things cleanly and efficiently and never sloppily. It did not take long for him to gain Yi Yun's deep trust. Later, Yi Yun became the head of the Yi family. According to the ancestral rules, after becoming the head of the family, he could only live in the ancestral home. Yi Yun was helpless and made an exception to arrange for him to live in the outer courtyard of the Yi family's ancestral home and let him be the gatekeeper. "Young master, you've returned." When Huang Shui saw that it was Yi Fan, he hurriedly stepped forward and bowed. "All the people from the various branches have arrived. You're the only one left," Huang Shui said as he helped Yi Fan carry the wooden box. "Uncle Huang, let me do it. Quickly bring me to see the head of the family. I have an urgent matter." Yi Fan did not hand the box over to him. His father had instructed him to personally hand it over to the head of the family, Yi Yun. Huang Shui had followed Yi Yun for more than 10 years and had long since learned how to read people's expressions. He naturally understood Yi Fan's intentions and led the way in front, bringing Yi Fan to see the head of the family, Yi Yun. As Yi Fan walked, he asked Huang Shui about the head of the family, how his body was, and how his spirit was. Huang Shui told Yi Fan that the head of the family, Yi Yun, was in good health. It was just that he had been frowning recently, as if he had something on his mind. He was currently relaxing in the back garden. The two of them chatted as they walked. After a while, they arrived at the back garden. This back garden was an important place in the Yi clan, where the head of the family lived and where the ancestral hall was located. According to common sense, an ordinary family's ancestral hall enshrined the memorial tablets of their ancestors. However, the Yi clan's ancestral hall was different. It enshrined not the memorial tablets of the Yi clan's ancestors, but a snake carved out of Kunlun white jade. The jade snake was 1 zhang tall and was carved out of a whole piece of Kunlun white jade. It was vivid and lifelike. The snake's body was coiled around the table. The snake's head was raised high, and its eyes were like lightning as it looked down. It was extremely majestic. It was said that the reason why the Yi clan enshrined this jade snake was because before the Yi clan had made a name for themselves, the ancestor of the Yi clan was a jade craftsman. Once, when he was searching for jade materials in Kunlun Mountain, a strong wind suddenly blew, causing sand and stones to fly. Lightning flashed and thunder roared, and a torrential rain fell from the sky. Kunlun Mountain's terrain was dangerous to begin with. There were many cliffs and forests, and in addition to the heavy rain, the Yi clan's ancestor was blown by the strong wind. He slipped and tumbled down a cliff. The Yi clan's ancestor closed his eyes and cursed inwardly. This time, he was afraid that he would lose his life in Kunlun. He originally thought that he would definitely fall into the mountain stream and be smashed to pieces. He never thought that his clothes would be caught by a pine tree on the cliff and suspended in midair. The Yi clan's ancestor was overjoyed. It seemed that the heavens did not want him to die. However, just as he was thinking of a way to climb up, he saw the most frightening scene in his life. Under the cliff, a huge white snake was staring at him. Its blood-red tongue flicked back and forth. The reason why it was called a huge snake was because this snake was too big. Its pair of green eyes were bigger than a car's wheel. The snake's body was so thick that several people would not be able to hug it. It was unknown how many times it had coiled in the bottomless mountain stream. It was piled up like a small mountain. There was a red bead the size of a plate on top of the snake's head. The red bead was sparkling and translucent. It kept spinning and was wrapped in a 5-colored light. At this time, thunder rumbled in the sky. Purple lightning as thick as a bowl struck the huge snake one after another. Every time it struck, the huge snake's head would shake. However, the huge snake was still unharmed. The lightning seemed to be completely dissolved by the red bead on top of its head. The Yi clan's ancestor was so shocked by the scene in front of him that he forgot his situation and was dumbstruck. While he was still in a daze, the sound of branches snapping could be heard. Then, his body became light, and he fell off the cliff again. It's over. I just escaped danger, and now I'm in the snake's mouth again. I'm definitely going to die today, he thought in his heart. As he gradually fell, the huge snake in front of him got closer and closer. The scales on the snake's body could be seen clearly. Each scale was the size of a basin. The Yi clan's ancestor closed his eyes and waited for death. However, the result was not as he thought. He would become food in the huge snake's mouth. He only felt his body sink. His body stopped moving, and there was no more movement. When he opened his eyes, he found that his body was cold and smooth. When he looked again, he was actually lying on top of the huge snake's head, and beside him was that red bead the size of a plate. At this time, he was so scared that he did not dare to move. Thunder rumbled above his head and the huge white snake below him. He regretted not looking at the almanac when he came. Now it was great. Instead of staying at home, he ran here to play with the snake. Just as he was thinking, the snake below him suddenly began to move. The wind whistled in his ears. The huge snake was slowly rising. He immediately laid down on the snake's head and did not dare to move. The huge snake below him seemed to understand his situation. It rose quickly and steadily. At this time, the red bead's light had completely enveloped him. The thunder rumbled, but did not strike again. In a short while, the huge snake had raised him to the flat mountainside. The snake's head stopped at the mountainside, but the snake's tail was still in the mountain stream. This huge snake was at least a few hundred feet long. After the huge snake stopped, it stretched its neck to the flat mountainside. Then it lowered its head. He slid down from the snake's head and landed steadily. At this time, the thunder and lightning in the sky suddenly stopped. In an instant, the clouds dispersed and the rain cleared. Looking at the huge snake again, the red bead on its head had changed color. It was no longer red, but golden. It was dazzling and golden. The bead was more than twice as big as when it was red. Chapter 9. The Yi clan's ancestor was still in shock and only calmed down after sitting on the mountainside for a long time. It was said that when animals cultivated to a certain stage, they would face a heavenly tribulation. This heavenly tribulation was the biggest test for animals' cultivation. It was said that snakes had to cultivate for 100 years before they could become flood dragons, and flood dragons had to cultivate for 1,000 years before they could become dragons. Generally, snakes in the mountains would have spirituality after a long time, so they couldn't be easily harmed. The biggest wish of animals' cultivation was to transform into a human form. Therefore, whether it was a weasel, a hedgehog, or a fox, transforming into a human form was their lifelong wish. However, there was one exception, and that was snakes. Their goal wasn't to become a human, but to transform into a dragon. For snakes, transforming into a dragon was more difficult than transforming into a human form. Generally speaking, if spiritual beings wanted to break away from their mortal bodies and transcend into a saint, they had to undergo 3 heavenly lightning baptisms before they could transform into a saint. However, spiritual beings that could undergo 3 heavenly lightning baptisms were very rare. Most of them would be destroyed by the heavenly lightning during the first heavenly tribulation. Therefore, it was common to see some burnt bones of animals in the mountains. Those were spiritual beings that failed the tribulation. There were usually 3 reasons for failing the tribulation. First, the spiritual beings themselves didn't have enough spiritual power. Generally speaking, they would experience a heavenly tribulation every 60 years. Therefore, during these 60 years, the spiritual beings had to cultivate with all their might and couldn't slack off. They had to maximize their spiritual power. This was so that they could survive the heavenly lightning baptisms. However, most of the spiritual beings had just developed their spiritual wisdom and couldn't resist the temptation of this colorful world. Therefore, there were very few spiritual beings that could cultivate peacefully. 60 years passed in a blink of an eye, so it wasn't strange for spiritual beings to fail the tribulation. There were also a small number of spiritual beings that wanted to cultivate wholeheartedly, but they couldn't bear the pain of cultivating in seclusion. Therefore, they came up with devious ideas and used opportunistic methods to increase their spiritual power. For example, they used the method of absorbing souls to cultivate their inner core. This method could increase spiritual power very quickly, but it was very harmful. These spiritual beings more or less had some divine abilities. They could either call the wind and summon the rain or spit out clouds and mist. They used these divine abilities to deceive some local people, falsely claiming that they were gods and needed children as tributes. Otherwise, calamities would descend and so on. They harmed the local people and cheated the people of their incense. Such spiritual beings had a very tragic ending. Usually, before the heavenly tribulation, they would be blasted into pieces by the heavenly lightning, and their primordial spirit would dissipate. Or they would be reported to the heavenly courts by the local earth and mountain gods, and be killed by the heavenly court's divine generals. There were also some spiritual beings that cultivated diligently after gaining sentience. Furthermore, they cultivated dutifully and never harmed humans or animals. Instead, they would appear from time to help the local people. However, he still didn't succeed in transcending the heavenly tribulation. The reason should be that he had committed too many evil deeds in his previous life, which affected his karma in this life, causing him to fail the tribulation. However, the heavens were benevolent. Although he failed to pass the tribulation, his primordial spirit was not scattered. Instead, he continued to enter the cycle of reincarnation. Give him a chance to continue cultivating. Therefore, it was very lucky to pass the tribulation successfully. Those who could pass the 3rd heavenly tribulation could be said to be very rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. After the Yi family's ancestor returned home, he had a dream that night. In the dream, a scholarly young man bowed to him. The young man told him that he was originally a white snake in Kunlun Mountain and had cultivated for more than 1,000 years. Today was the day he encountered his 3rd heavenly tribulation. There were a total of 9 bolts of heavenly lightning. Originally, with his cultivation, he could withstand 6 bolts of heavenly lightning at most. There was no way he could dodge the remaining 3 bolts of heavenly lightning no matter what. However, just as the 7th bolt of heavenly lightning was about to strike, the Yi family's ancestor fell right on his head. He knew that he definitely couldn't dodge the remaining 3 bolts of heavenly lightning. Now that he saw someone fall into the mountain stream, rather than losing his life in vain, he might as well save this person with all his cultivation. Therefore, he used all his spiritual energy to cover him and sent him to a flat place. After he saved him, he found that the heavenly lightning had already dissipated. Now, he already knew that the heavens considered him to be kind-hearted and honest. Ever since he started cultivating, he had never harmed humans or animals. Moreover, at a critical moment, he could disregard his own life to save those who fell off the cliff. It was not easy for a snake to have such a kind heart. An exception was made to let him pass through this heavenly tribulation and avoid the last 3 bolts of heavenly lightning. That red pearl was originally his primordial spirit's Niden. After being baptized by the heavenly lightning, it had already turned into a dragon pearl. He now had the body of a heavenly dragon. Today, if it wasn't for the Yi family's ancestor, he was afraid that he would have been bombarded into ashes by the heavenly lightning. This time, he specially came to repay the Yi family's ancestor and asked him what he wanted. He would try his best to satisfy him. After the Yi family's ancestor heard this, he was greatly shocked. It seemed that the heavenly tribulation was not just a rumor. However, this time, although he coincidentally helped him pass through the heavenly tribulation and turned into a dragon, to be honest, his life was also saved by him. If it wasn't for him passing through the heavenly tribulation, he would have already died and fallen into the mountain stream, smashed into pieces. Thinking of this, the Yi family's ancestor said to the scholarly young man, "You passed through the heavenly tribulation because you have a kind heart and devoted yourself to cultivation. Although it was because of me that you had the opportunity to accumulate merits. In the end, I was only a test for you. Moreover, if it wasn't for you, I would have already lost my life in Kunlun. If you want to say thank you, I still have to thank you. Now that you have the body of a heavenly dragon and I have survived, you and I don't owe each other anything. Don't mention anything about repayment." After the young man heard this, he pondered for a moment and said to the Yi family's ancestor, "How about this? You can worship my memorial tablet at home. In the future, if there is an emergency, you can burn incense and pray. Under the condition that it doesn't violate the heavenly laws, I will definitely help. This time, since you don't tell me what you want, then I will act on my own. Tomorrow, you can go to Kunlun Mountain again. Halfway up the mountain where I appeared, I prepared a gift for you. That was something that I begged the Kunlun Mountain god with great difficulty. No matter what, please accept it to express my gratitude." After saying this, the young man bowed deeply and disappeared. After the Yi family's ancestor woke up from his dream, he deeply agreed. Early the next morning, he once again came to the halfway up Kunlun Mountain where he met with danger yesterday. However, no matter how carefully he searched, he did not find anything special. Just when he thought that perhaps he was dreaming about something that he thought about during the day, a corner of a huge rock beside him suddenly cracked, revealing a piece of snow-white jade. The Yi family's ancestor hurriedly went forward to take a look. He was so shocked that he could not believe his eyes. This was a piece of top-grade Kunlun white jade. What surprised him even more was that this piece of Kunlun white jade was more than 10 feet tall and weighed at least 500 kilograms. Ever since the Yi family's ancestor was born, he had never heard of such a big piece of Kunlun jade with such good quality, let alone seeing it. The biggest piece of jade he had ever seen was only a square foot. Moreover, its quality was like heaven and earth compared to this piece of white jade. It seemed that what the young man said in his dream was not false. A huge fortune fell from the sky, causing him to be unable to suppress the ecstasy in his heart. He rewrapped the exposed part of the white jade with the stone that fell off and then rushed back home. He spent a lot of money to find someone to transport this huge rock home. Because he was a jade craftsman himself, he naturally did not need the help of others. After a few days, he finally completely peeled off this piece of Kunlun jade. The entire piece of white jade was sparkling and translucent with a gentle color. Especially at night, it emitted a gentle white light like a luminous pearl. It illuminated 5 steps and was magnificent. The Yi family's ancestor did not expect that the white snake would give him such a generous gift. Thinking that the white snake had already become a dragon and promised to grant his request, The Yi family's ancestor decided to simply carve this piece of jade into the shape of the white snake and worship it for generations. After thinking about it, he began to pretend that he was ill and shut himself in. He spent half a year carving this piece of Kunlun white jade according to the shape of the giant snake. After fasting, changing clothes, burning incense, and bathing, he enshrined the statue in the secret chamber. On the night of the enshrining ceremony, the scholar-looking young man appeared in the Yi family's ancestor's dream again. In the dream, the young man asked him why he did not offer the white jade to the current emperor. If he did, the emperor would definitely give him glory, splendor, wealth, and rank and promotion. The Yi family's ancestor told the scholar that he had been saved by the immortal, and he had no way to repay him. Now that the immortal has given me such a beautiful piece of jade, I really feel bad. In order to repay the immortal's kindness of saving my life, I will offer Buddha with borrowed flowers. I will carve this beautiful piece of jade into the immortal's appearance to show my sincerity. As for the glory, splendor, and wealth, the leftover jade would be enough for him to live the rest of his life. The young man laughed heartily and said, "How rare! It's rare that you have such a pure heart and few desires. If you have any difficulties in the future, you can tell me, and I will definitely help you." After saying that, he disappeared. Chapter 10. After the gatekeeper, Huang Shouyi, led Yi Fan to the back garden, he told him that the head of the household, Yi Yun, was currently burning incense in the ancestral hall. He told him to wait outside the ancestral hall. Since he was an outsider, he couldn't stay here for too long. After saying that, he turned around and left. Yi Fan took off the wooden box on his back and placed it on the stone table in the pavilion outside the ancestral hall. He sat on the stone bench and waited for the head of the household, Yi Yun, to come out. In less than the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the head of the household, Yi Yun, walked out of the ancestral hall. His brows were tightly furrowed, and his hands were clasped behind his back. His footsteps were slow, and he looked like he had a lot on his mind. When he raised his head and saw Yi Fan, Yi Yun's spirits were lifted, and he looked very happy. He took large strides towards Yi Fan. When Yi Fan saw this, he quickly stood up and bowed. Although Yi Yun usually doted on him, the eldest son and eldest grandson, rules were rules. He couldn't be careless in the slightest. Yi Fan pays respect to the head of the household. Yi Fan bowed. Get up, get up." Yi Yun reached out and helped Yi Fan up. "I haven't seen you in a year, Fan Air. You've matured a lot. Come, follow me into the house. Let's have a good chat." As Yi Yun spoke, he pulled Yi Fan's hand and walked towards his residence. Yi Fan didn't dare to be negligent. He carried the wooden box and followed the head of the household to Yi Yun's residence. Yi Yun's residence wasn't far from the ancestral hall. After Yi Fan entered the house, he handed the wooden box on his back to Yi Yun. "Grandfather, this is a gift that my father specially prepared for you. He said that I must hand it to you personally. In order to deliver this item, I suffered a lot along the way." As Yi Fan spoke, he couldn't wait to pick up the snacks on the table and stuff them into his mouth. Then, he picked up the teacup and drank 3 large cups of water. He was very careful along the way and didn't dare to eat roadside food. He didn't even dare to drink water, as he was afraid that the Japanese ninjas would poison him. Just like that, he ran all the way back to the ancestral house. Oh, Ian took the box, but he didn't open it. Instead, he frowned and asked, "What happened?" With the Ye's current strength, no matter who offended the Yi family's residents, it was no different from a moth to a flame. Who had the guts to dare to steal the Yez's things? Yi Fan put down the teacup and told the whole story to Yi Yun. From the Japanese ninja's sneak attack, the black-robed old monster's robbery of the treasure, the white-clothed woman's rescue, the Yi family's disaster, and so on, he told Yi Yun everything. Yi Yun didn't speak after listening. Instead, he frowned and carefully looked at the item that Yi Kong had given him. It seemed that the item in the box wasn't an ordinary sword. Otherwise, it wouldn't have attracted the attention of the Japanese ninjas. He carefully unwrapped the green cloth that was wrapped around it, layer by layer. Then, he saw a rectangular sandalwood box. The box was antique and and smooth. The four corners were wrapped in gold. At first glance, he knew that it was an old item. The box wasn't locked. Instead, there was a hidden clasp. The clasp was in the shape of a small fish. The small fish was carved out of jade and looked very lifelike. Yi pressed the fish's eye with his finger. With a snap, the box opened. Yi Fan stretched his neck and was ready to see what was so mysterious that it had put him in danger several times. Who knew that when the box was opened by Yi Yun, a golden light would shoot up from the box? Suddenly, the room was filled with light and the air waves dispersed. Everything in the room was blown askew by this gust of wind. The teacups and teapots on the table fell to the ground, making a mess of the floor. Yi Fan had been frightened all along the way. At this time, he hadn't recovered yet. When he saw the golden light explode, he was so scared that he jumped away. Looking at the box again, he saw a sword lying there quietly. It was emitting a dazzling golden light. After the golden light dissipated, Yi Yun took the sword out of the box and looked at it carefully. Yi Fan came forward. He wanted to see what the white-clothed woman said that the divine weapon that could save the Yi family looked like. The sword in Yi Yun's hand was completely golden. The sword was more than 3 feet long. The top of the sword hilt was inlaid with a golden bead. Below it, there were 9 unknown strange birds circling around it. The strange birds were surrounded by flowing clouds and flames. They were very lifelike. The scabbard was carved with a picture of a celestial phenomenon. The sun, moon, and stars were arranged on it. Golden ringed sword. Yi Yun, who had been calm a moment ago, was now trembling with excitement. His eyes were shining. This is the golden ringed sword. Yi Fan was stunned. Ever since he was born, he had never seen his grandfather so excited. Even when his grandfather defeated many of the Yi family's swordsmithing experts to become the head of the Yi family, he was not as excited as he was today. Grandfather, this golden ring sword, is it very powerful? Yi Fan was somewhat puzzled. The Yi family was a family of weaponsmiths. As the head of the Yi family, his grandfather, Yi Yun, had seen all kinds of peerless divine weapons. Today, this golden ring sword could actually make the head of the Yi family so excited. Yi Fan could not figure it out. In his eyes, his grandfather's treasured sword, Snowthread, was the supreme sword among swords. It was a divine weapon among divine weapons. Even his grandfather had said that Snowthread was the work he was most satisfied with in his life. It could be said that there were very few weapons in the world that could defeat Snowthread. At this time, Yi Yun was still immersed in great joy. He did not hear what Yi Fan said to him. He was still looking down and carefully admiring the treasured sword in his hand. As he stroked the treasured sword, he muttered to himself with a pious expression. It seemed that he was just short of worshipping this treasured sword. Seeing this scene, Yi Fan wanted to laugh. It was said that people were like children when they got older. It seemed that this was indeed the case. He simply picked up the chair that had been flipped over by the chi wave and sat down on it, waiting for his grandfather, Yi Yun, to come back to his senses. There was no point in just sitting there. Bored to death, his gaze fell on the red sandalwood box on the table. The whole box was made of a precious whole piece of Venus red sandalwood. Its surface was dotted with golden stars. Yi Fan knew a thing or two about this kind of wood, because he had been influenced by what he saw and heard in the pawn shop since he was young. It was called 10 sandalwood and 9 void. To be able to make such a big Venus red sandalwood box, it would take at least a few hundred years of old. Yi Fan habitually held the box in his hand and carefully played with it. He did not expect that he would be able to see through this. The wooden box had already been opened. He saw that the smooth and simple wooden box actually hid a mystery. The inside of the box was densely packed with many words and patterns. In the middle of the box, there was a lotus with 9 leaves. In the middle of the lotus, there was a Buddhist swastika symbol. The whole lotus was surrounded by many words that resembled Sanskrit. What was surprising was that the words and patterns were not engraved, written, or drawn. They were inlaid. The lotus leaves and lotus roots were made of mutton fat jade and jade respectively. The craftsmanship was exquisite. The veins on the leaves were very realistic. The whole lotus looked clean and lifelike. The swastika and other Sanskrit words on the lotus were inlaid with golden threads. There were more than 2,000 words in the whole text. The golden light was dazzling and solemn. It was a Buddhist style. Although Yifan did not recognize the whole Sanskrit, the title of the Sanskrit was an ancient seal. Yifan had been forced by his father, Yi Kong, to learn ancient seal. After all, the pawnshop collected antiques. Most of the words were in ancient seal. Therefore, when these ancient seal words came into view, Yifan could not help but blurt out, "The great Buddha had Lung Yin mantra." The Lung Yin mantra was the king of Buddhist mantras. It was said in the sutra, "Then the world venerable one, from the meat bun, 100 treasures light. From the light, 1,000 leaves lotus emerged. From the center of the treasure sat Tathagata. From the top, 1,000 treasures light were released." One by one, the light was revealed. 10 hidden traces of the Ganges Sandvajra, holding up the mountain and holding the pestle. Throughout the void realm, everyone looks up to, fears, loves, and embraces. Pray for the Buddha's protection. Listen to the Buddha wholeheartedly. Without seeing the top, let the Tathagata shine and proclaim the mantra. This mantra was recited by the Buddha head Shakyamuni. It was mysterious and incredible. It was said to be able to subdue some demons and evil spirits. Yifan looked at the box lid in surprise. He then looked at the bottom of the box and found that the bottom of the box was also engraved with patterns and words. Different from the Buddha style on the box lid, the bottom of the box was a Taoist style. In the middle of the bottom of the box, there was a Tai Chi 8 trigrams diagram. The yin-yang fish in the Tai Chi 8 trigrams diagram was made of top-grade black jade and mutton fat white jade. Yifan recognized the densely packed words around it. It was the 5,000 words of virtue written by the ancestor of Taoism, Lunar. "What's going on? It's just a sword box. Is there a need to go through so much trouble?" Yifan thought. He was ready to tell his grandfather Yi Yun, who was still immersed in the golden ring sword, who knew that when he looked up and was about to speak, he realized that something was wrong. At this time, Yi Yun was no longer admiring the sword. He was standing at the window with his arms crossed and the sword in his arms. He stood straight and looked out the window, silent and motionless. "Grandfather," Yifan called out tentatively. Ever since he obtained the golden ring sword, his grandfather Yi Yun's reaction seemed a little strange. Hearing Yifan calling out to him, Yi Yun did not move. Instead, he slowly turned his head and smiled at Yifan. This terrifying smile shocked Yifan so much that his soul flew out of his body. The eyes of Yi Yun in front of him were no longer the eyes of a normal person. Instead, they had turned golden and shone brightly. It was the fiery golden eyes. "He's not my grandfather," Yifan thought in his heart. He understood the function of the incantation in the box. Those incantations must be used to suppress the golden ring sword. It must be that the golden ring sword had been suppressed by the Buddhist and Taoist incantations for a long time. Now that it could see the light of day again, the sword spirit was attached to Yi Yun's body. The golden light that appeared when the box was opened just now was the sword spirit breaking out of the seal. Now, if he wanted to restore his grandfather Yi Yun's consciousness, he was afraid that there were only 3 ways. The first way was to defeat the sword spirit attached to his grandfather and force him to leave. The second way was to find a way to take the golden ring sword away from his grandfather and put it back into the wooden box to seal it again. The last way was to have a good talk with the sword spirit and see what he wanted to do. He would try his best to satisfy his request and solve the problem peacefully. Yifan did not even dare to think about the first way. From the signs when the box was opened and Yi Yun's horrified expression when he saw the golden ring sword, he knew that it was not an ordinary magic weapon. In addition, Fujiwara no Chico had told him that this sword was the key to saving the entire Yi family. It could be seen that the sword's power was not small. But then again, the sword had become a spirit. How could it be an ordinary item? The second way was to find a way to take the golden ring sword away from Yi Yun's hands and seal it again. However, although this method sounded simple, it was as difficult as ascending to heaven. Now, Yi Fan could only choose the third way, which was to have a good talk with the sword spirit in front of him. He would act according to the circumstances and take one step at a time. Thinking of this, Yi Fan calmed down and stood up to salute Yi Yun. I wonder which Shangxian has graced my humble abode with your presence. Please enlighten me. Yi Fan first gave him a high hat and called him an immortal. This way, even if the other party did not come with good intentions, he would not suddenly attack. Yi Yun, in front of him, slowly turned around, and the smile on his face became even more mysterious. Yi Yun did not answer Yi Fan's question. Instead, he glanced at Yi Fan with his pair of golden eyes and then looked in the direction of the ancestral hall. I didn't expect that there would be hidden dragons and crouching tigers here. There is actually a heavenly dragon protecting you. No wonder, no wonder. After saying this, he turned around again and continued to look out of the window. After so many years, the famous eldritch of the past has actually become so refined and polite. He saluted me and called me an immortal. Alas, heaven is really unpredictable. Yi Yun sighed. Yi Fan did not fully understand these words. However, he understood the first part of the words. This sword spirit was indeed powerful. He could recognize the heavenly dragon worshipped in the ancestral hall at a glance. However, he did not understand the latter part of the words. He was clearly the eldest grandson of the Yi family, Yi Fan. How could he be the eldritch that the sword spirit spoke of? Who was eldritch? Just as Yi Fan was about to ask the sword spirit why he was attached to Yi Yun, he suddenly heard a strong gust of wind outside. Sand and pebbles flew everywhere. The weather was fine just a moment ago, but it suddenly became cloudy. The flying sand and pebbles outside made the windows crackle. Immediately after, a deafening sound of thunder came from the direction of the ancestral hall. How could there be thunder in the dead of winter? Just as Yi Fan was puzzled, he saw Yi Yun chuckle. I didn't expect it to be him. Chapter 11. The young man in front of him was dressed in white and had a square headscarf on his head. His face was like the autumn moon, his eyes were like cold stars, his lips were red, and his teeth were white. He looked like an immortal. After he pushed the door open, he slowly walked towards Yi Yun, while Yi Yun looked at him with a smile. Yi Fan was a little confused. He thought that everything would be fine after he returned to the Yi clan's ancestral home, and he could have a good rest. But now, so many strange things happened before he even drank a few mouthfuls of water. If he guessed correctly, this person should be the white snake that saved the Yi clan's ancestor and successfully passed the tribulation. No, it should be the sky dragon now. One was the golden ring sword spirit, the other was the sky dragon true body. These two people that Yi Fan didn't even dare to think about usually appeared in the Yi clan's ancestral home at the same time, making him feel a little overwhelmed. Everything happened too suddenly. Before the first wave subsided, another wave arose. But no matter what, the appearance of the sky dragon was a good thing. The Yi clan had worshipped him for so many years. This sudden appearance would definitely subdue the golden ring sword spirit and allow his grandfather, Yi Yun, to regain his consciousness. Since the true dragon personally came to the Yi clan's residence, and he was a descendant of the Yi clan, he had to kneel down and pay his respects. Thinking of this, Yi Fan didn't dare to be negligent. His legs went soft, and he knelt on the ground. Yi clan's benefactor above. The 28th generation's great-great-grandson, Yi Fan, kowtows to you. After he finished speaking, he bent over and kowtowed a few times. Get up first and stand aside, the young man said. He had already arrived in front of Yi Yun and stared at Yi Yun. Yes. Yi Fan got up and stood aside with his hand by his side. I haven't seen you for a few hundred years. I didn't expect you to have successfully passed the tribulation and become the sky dragon true body. Yi Yun finally spoke. You're not bad either. 80% of your evil aura has been removed. The day of your ascension is just around the corner. The young man said, Hee. Then tell me, are you stronger or am I stronger now? Yi Yun laughed. I don't know. The young man shook his head and replied, why don't you give it a try? Yi Yun took a step forward, and the distance between them was now less than 3 feet. If the two of us were to compete, I'm afraid this agonizing hawk peak would be destroyed. Besides, I'm in an important position now. I can't act recklessly like before, the young man said with a smile. You're still the same as before. You're always cautious and watertight, Yiyun said. You're still as bad-tempered as before. You won't give up until we're done. If you had listened to me back then, you would have already ascended. Why would you be trapped in this treasured sword? The young man continued. Since when did you become so wishy-washy? Are you going to compete or not? Ian did not give up. If you don't want to compete, I will definitely not leave. How do you want to compete? The young man seemed to have no idea. Ha, same old rules, 3 moves. Ian laughed when he saw that he agreed to the competition. Do you believe that I'll beat you back to your old serpent form within 3 moves? No. I've already said that you can't act recklessly like before. If you want to compete, that's fine. The young man smiled. But it can only be a battle of wits. A battle of wits. Ian thought for a moment. All right, a battle of wits it is. Tell me, how do you want to compete? Follow me. The young man turned around and walked towards the door. Let's go somewhere else. Hee, I'll do as you say. Ian followed behind the young man and walked out of the room. Yifan did not dare to delay and followed them to the rockery in the garden. It was the 12th lunar month of winter. The grass in the garden was withered and desolate. Other than some tall pine trees, there were only a few lotus ponds and a rockery made of stones. The rockery was more than 100 feet wide and 50 to 60 feet tall. Do you see this rockery? We'll compete with it. The young man stopped in front of the rockery and said, How? Don't tell me we're competing with the mountain shifting technique. This is too small. Yiyun said disdainfully. The rules are simple. You and I will each make 3 moves. I'll attack this rockery and you'll defend it. After 3 moves, if I break even a small stone on the rockery, it'll be your loss. Then you and I will switch. You'll attack and I'll defend. What do you think? The young man began to explain the rules of the battle of wits. Simple and clear. Yiyun seemed to be very happy. He walked slowly to the rockery and turned around to look at the young man. Come, we haven't made the bet clear yet. How do we compete? The young man smiled. What do you want to bet? If I win, you have to tell me your purpose this time. Don't think that I don't know. With your current cultivation, that box can't trap you at all. The young man said seriously. Those who have survived the heavenly tribulation are indeed different. All right, I agree. However, what if I win? Yin tilted his head and looked at the young man. What can you give me? Is it going to rain on me? Ha ha. If I lose, I'll show you my original snake form. What do you think? The young man seemed to be very confident. Ha, good. That's a good idea. Yin clapped and laughed. I've only heard of snakes transforming into dragons, but I've never seen a dragon transforming into a snake. You can't go back on your word. This isn't the first time we've made a bet. When have I ever gone back on my word? The young man laughed. All right, come. Yiyun stopped smiling and walked directly to the rockery. After standing still, Yiyun slowly floated up from the ground and stopped 3 feet above the ground. His whole body was covered in golden light. Light and shadow flowed around him like a god descending from the heavens. In this dark night, he was especially eye-catching. Golden light array? I haven't seen you for a few hundred years, and you've actually mastered such a profound array. It seems like you've already made preparations for your tribulation. All right, I'd like to see what realm you've reached. As the young man spoke, he took out an item. It was a bead the size of a walnut. It was completely red and surrounded by auspicious chi. It floated in his palm and kept spinning. Without another word, the young man threw the bead in his hand at the rockery. A red beam shot towards the rockery like a shooting star. Boom! With a loud bang, the bead hit the rockery solidly. Immediately, golden light shot out in all directions. The ground around the rockery was instantly filled with chi waves, stirring up dust several feet high. What kind of power was this? Yifan thought to himself. Not to mention the rockery. Even a real mountain would have a huge hole in it. He was suddenly worried about his grandfather, Yiyun. He didn't care how badly the sword spirit was beaten up. The most important thing was that his grandfather's body wasn't damaged. The dust that filled the sky finally dissipated. Yifan rubbed his eyes, and only then did he see clearly what was in front of him. What he saw shocked Yifan so much that his eyeballs nearly fell to the ground. The scene in front of him was not filled with rubble, as he had imagined. Not to mention rubble, even the withered grass on the rockery had not fallen. Instead, the bluestone slabs around the rockery had been completely shattered. The bluestone slabs were several inches thick, and even a hammer would find it difficult to break them. But now, they had been shattered into pieces. Looking at Yiyun again, it was as if nothing had happened. Not to mention being injured, there wasn't even a speck of dust on his body. As for the bead, it was still floating in midair and spinning. Thunderfire bead? Yiyun said, "How did this thing end up in your hands? Don't worry about that. This is just the appetizer. It's just a small test. Prepare for my second move." The young man stretched out his hand and beckoned. The bead immediately flew back into his hand. "This time, I'm going for Real. You have to be careful." As the young man spoke, the thunderfire bead in his hand exploded with red light and instantly enveloped the young man, forming a huge red ball of light. Above the ball of light, purple lightning swam around it, making sizzling sounds. "You should have done this long ago. This is more satisfying." Yiyun laughed. His body rose another 3 feet. The golden light on his body shone brightly, and his hair fluttered in the wind. He looked like a god. In the blink of an eye, the thunderfire bead in the young man's hand shot out like a meteor. This time it was not aimed at the rockery, but at Yiyun. The huge ball of light dragged a long red tail like a comet. It rumbled and whizzed in the direction of Yiyun. That's more like it. Yiyun faced the incoming ball of light without changing his expression. He pointed the golden ring sword in his hand at the ball of light. Swoosh! A golden beam of light as thick as a bowl shot out from the bottom of the scabbard and stabbed into the ball of light. Boom! The ball of light instantly exploded, and a red ring of light rapidly expanded in the air. Following the loud roar, all the towering trees in the back garden were neatly cut down by the rapidly expanding ring of light in an instant. The withered flowers and plants on the ground were also uprooted by the huge wave of air. The back garden, which was in good condition just a moment ago, turned into a mess in the blink of an eye. Yifan was shocked by the scene in front of him. He was so shocked that he was tongue-tied and dumbfounded. Weren't all immortals quiet and inactive? Why were the 2 immortals in front of him so angry? They were all immortals and were at least 1,000 years old. Why couldn't they sit down and talk things out? That sky dragon was the same. If it was a civil battle, then so be it. Couldn't they just use a dice to compare big and small? If it really didn't work, then use a silver coin to guess heads and tails. Must they fight? If they want to fight, then fight. But don't fight in the Yi residence. You are all immortals. If you want to fight, then fight in the sky. If it really doesn't work, then fight in the mountains. No matter what, you can't fight in the back garden and turn the back garden into a plowed field. Is this the so-called civil battle? If it was a martial battle, wouldn't the eagle's distress peak be overturned as well? Now, the fake mountain was saved, but the garden was gone. Yifan wanted to flare up, but he didn't dare to. He couldn't afford to offend the 2 immortals in front of him. One was the sky dragon who protected the Yi family, while the other was the sword spirit who was said to be able to save the Yi family's fate. Yifan could only let them do as they pleased in the ancestral home. The young man was a little embarrassed. He waved his hand and kept the Thunderfire Pearl in his pocket. He had already used 2 moves, but the golden array still hadn't been broken. Instead, the Yi family's garden was in tatters. No matter what, he was still the protector of the Yi family. In any case, he had been the successor of the Yi family for hundreds of years. Now that he only had one chance left, if he still couldn't win, it wouldn't sound good in the heavenly court. Continue. There's one more move. I haven't been as happy as I am today for hundreds of years. Yiyun looked relaxed. Are you sure you want me to use the 3rd move? The young man took a deep breath and said seriously. Don't be so wishy-washy, Yiyun said with a smile. We haven't sparred for hundreds of years. I thought you were destroyed by the heavenly thunder during your tribulation. Now that you've become a sky dragon, your strength is different from before. You have to open my eyes no matter what. You set yourself. Don't regret it, the young man said with a smile. This time, his smile was different from before. There was a hint of coldness in his laughter. You're finally serious. Yi noticed the change in the young man's expression. Show me your most powerful move. Don't worry, you can't kill me. Then I'll do as you say. The young man waved his hand in the air. A treasured sword appeared out of thin air. The sword was about 1 meter long and was surrounded by purple energy. Do you know where I work in the heavenly court? The young man reached out and held the dazzling treasured sword. He looked at the sword from top to bottom and asked, I don't know. Yi Yun shook his head with a smile. Thunder Department, the young man said softly. Although the young man said these 2 words casually, it obviously had an effect. After Yi Yun heard these 2 words, the smile on his face disappeared. He was no longer as calm as before. I'm sure you know this sword. Thunder God, and I made a bet, and he lost to me. He lent me this sword for a year. The young man smiled and looked up at Yi Yun. Just in case. Yi Yun's reaction seemed to satisfy him. Lei Jun. Yi Yun spat out these 2 words. That's right. It's Lei Jun. As expected of someone who stayed in the heavenly court. You're so knowledgeable. The young man was in extremely good mood. I don't need to say more about the power of this Lei Jun sword. How about it? Do you want to consider whether to take my 3rd move? Yi Yun's reaction was out of the young man's expectation. Although this Lei Jun sword is a divine sword of the Thunder Department, you have to understand that when I was born, the Thunder Department didn't exist yet. The young man was so angry at Yi Yun that he couldn't say anything. Fine. Since you said so, I won't waste any more words. Whether you win or lose, we'll decide it with 1 move. Fine. Today, I want to see how powerful the legendary Lei Jun sword is. Yi Yun rose 9 feet above the ground and stood with his hands behind his back. The golden light on his body surged and formed a light ball that was 1 zhang wide. 9 unknown golden birds flew around the light ball. The young man smiled. His feet left the ground and slowly floated up. When he reached the same height as Yi Yun, he stopped. Then, he raised the Lei Jun sword high above his head. In an instant, dark clouds covered the young man's head. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. 9 purple lightning bolts shuttled back and forth in the dark clouds like giant snakes. It was a majestic sight. Heaven's might was unpredictable and heaven's will was hard to defy. This heavenly lightning of the purest yang had always been the representation of heaven's might in the hearts of all cultivators. They loved it but also feared it. They loved it because only when their cultivation reached a certain realm, they could attract the heavenly tribulation. They were afraid because only a few could safely pass through the heavenly tribulation. Heaven's grace is vast and mighty. All things in the world. The young man spoke in a cold voice. Purple firmament divine might. 10,000 thunderbolts. Just as he finished speaking, the weather changed. The 9 purple lightning bolts in the dark clouds above his head shot down and instantly intertwined with the Lei Jun sword in his hand. The 9 lightning bolts twisted into a huge purple belt of light. It was like a huge purple dragon coiling around the Lei Jun sword. Boom! Accompanied by the rumbling of thunder, a purple beam of light shot up from the Lei Jun sword into the clouds. The dark clouds above his head were pierced by the purple beam of light, forming a huge whirlpool that spun nonstop. It's not too late for you to regret now. The young man stood in the air and said loudly, It's not a small formation. I wonder if it's just for show. Yi Yun laughed. You sure talk big. I want to see how powerful your ancient secret technique, golden light formation, is. How can it withstand my Lei Jun sword? After the young man said that, he slashed down with the Lei Jun sword. 9 purple lightning bolts formed a huge beam of light that was accompanied by a loud thunder roar, and it shot straight at Yi Yun. The ground was instantly dyed purple by the huge beam of light. Legend had it that the heavenly tribulation had at most 9 bolts of lightning. However, They came one after another, each stronger than the last. This time, the young man had directly combined 9 bolts of lightning into one. One could imagine how powerful it was. Yin-yang chaos, lifeless endurance. Supreme 9 suns, golden light formation. Yin was imposing without being angry. The golden light on his body suddenly surged. The golden ball of light expanded to 3 zhong, like a small sun. The golden light was so dazzling that no one dared to look directly at it. Yifan was already staring at her with his mouth agape. He was completely mesmerized. He was thinking about when he would be satisfied if his cultivation could reach 1/10,000th of the 2 people in front of him. However, he reckoned that this hatred would never end in this lifetime. The purple lightning arrived as soon as he said it would. In the blink of an eye, it struck the golden ball of light on Yiyun. Boom! The golden ball of light and the purple lightning collided, causing the ground to tremble. Shockwaves spread out in all directions. The shockwaves from the shockwaves spread out rapidly with the 2 at the center. All the blue stone slabs in the back garden were instantly shattered and sent flying into the air. In an instant, gravel fell to the ground like a rainstorm, stirring up a cloud of dust that was more than 10 zhong high. The towering trees in the garden that had been chopped in half were completely uprooted. They flew into the air before falling heavily to the ground. Yifan used his long sleeves to block the dust before looking at the 2 people. The 2 people were still in midair. The dark clouds above the sky dragon's head had already dispersed. The golden light on Yiyun had also disappeared. Chapter 12. However, the back garden was not so lucky. The whole ground looked like it had been turned over, and it was full of holes. Except for the rockery and the house, the whole ground was full of holes and gravel. Yifan was covered in dust, and there was not a clean spot on his body. The golden light formation is indeed an ancient secret technique. It is so powerful that it can withstand my 9 thunderbolts. However, the young man frowned. Since you have practiced the golden light formation to such a level, why don't you go through the heavenly tribulation? Haha, there is no meaning in heaven at all. There are rules here and there. It is not as free as the human world. If it was not to avoid the heavenly tribulation, I would not stay in that box. Let's not talk nonsense. You have a good time, but now it is my turn. I should vent my anger. I have been bored to death for hundreds of years. Yiyun laughed. Okay, I will also learn from you and see how much your cultivation has improved. After the young man finished speaking, the 2 of them exchanged positions, and the attacking and defending positions immediately changed. Don't be careless. I will not show you mercy. Yiyun imitated the young man's tone just now. After hearing this, the young man smiled and closed his eyes in the air. In an instant, water vapor lingered around him, and a huge silver water dragon circled around the young man. In an instant, the young man was completely surrounded. The water dragon glared at him, raised its head, and wagged its tail. It was crystal clear and majestic. Water dragon protection? Yiyun laughed. That's not a bad idea. I'm surprised you thought of it. The young man did not answer. He still closed his eyes in the huge water dragon. Seeing this, Yiyun turned his right palm and closed his 5 fingers. In an instant, 5 rays of golden light flowed from his fingertips like water and gathered in his palm, forming a walnut-sized golden ball. The golden ball rotated and shone brightly. As the 5 rays of golden light flowed from his 5 fingers, the golden ball in his palm grew bigger and bigger. Gradually, it formed a golden ball of light that was 1 foot in size. Seeing this, Yifan hurriedly retreated a few meters. He understood that Yiyun would definitely throw this ball of light at the young man. At that time, it would definitely create a huge shockwave. Before he threw out the ball of light, he had to avoid the brunt of the attack, lest the city gate caught on fire and the fish in the moat would be implicated. Zizi, the ball of light in Yiyun's hand spun faster and faster, and the light grew brighter and brighter, producing a hissing sound as it rubbed against the air. Yiyun laughed. Take this. As he spoke, he suddenly pushed the golden ball in his hand toward the young man. However, things did not develop as Fan had imagined. The golden ball of light did not leave Yi Yun and fly towards the young man. Instead, it remained in Yi Yun's hands. Under his control, countless golden lights shot out from the golden ball of light in his palm. They were densely packed, like thousands of arrows shooting out at the same time. The golden lights that shot towards the young man like a torrential rain. The rain of light was like lightning, instantly covering the fake mountain and the young man. This move was extremely domineering. Even if the young man protected himself, he could not guarantee that he could protect the fake mountain. As long as one of the golden lights hit the fake mountain, the result would be obvious. In the air, Yi Yun sneered as he controlled the golden ball of light to shoot thousands of arrows at the same time. He had deliberately created an illusion to make the young man think that the move was aimed at him. In fact, he had already secretly changed the shape of the golden light. His real target was actually the fake mountain. Now that the young man wanted to protect the fake mountain, it was too late. Just as the storm-like golden lights were about to hit the young man and the fake mountain, the young man and the water dragon suddenly opened his eyes. As he opened his eyes, he formed a seal with one hand. The water dragon coiled around his body instantly spun around him at high speed, forming a huge water tornado. At the same time, countless water arrows shot out from the water tornado, rushing towards the thousands of golden lights at high speed. For a moment, the golden lights were dazzling. Boom, boom, boom. The thousands of golden lights collided with the countless water arrows shot out from the water tornado, instantly turning into steam. The entire garden was instantly shrouded in steam. His reaction is quite fast. Yi Yun did not expect this result. He originally thought that he could defeat his opponent in one move, but who would have thought that his opponent would be able to counter his moves so easily? What other moves do you have? Feel free to use them. The young man was still standing in the middle of the water dragon, laughing in the air. Interesting. I really underestimated you. Yi Yun laughed mischievously. Cut the crap. I still have 2 moves. The young man raised 2 fingers and gestured. Do you think a mere water dragon can stop me? Yi Yun said as he stopped smiling and closed his eyes. Countless golden lights began to slowly rise from Yi Yun's body and condensed 9 feet above his head, forming a golden umbrella with a radius of 3 feet. As the golden light on his body grew stronger, the water dragon on the young man's body began to become restless, as if it was facing a great enemy. The dragon's whiskers fluttered, its eyes were wide open, and it raised its head and wagged its tail. The young man was a little surprised. He immediately formed a seal with one hand, trying to calm the water dragon down. However, no matter how hard he tried, the water dragon coiled around and became more and more restless. Its huge dragon eyes were fixed on the golden umbrella above Yi Yun's head. If the young man hadn't formed a seal with one hand, the water dragon would have already charged over. The young man was a little confused. Dragons were the leader of all things. They were the purest of yang. What kind of spiritual item could make a water dragon so nervous? Just as the young man was forming a seal with one hand to calm the water dragon down, Yi Yun in front of him moved. Yi Yun, in the golden light, suddenly made a seal with one hand. As the seal changed, the golden light that enveloped his body changed as well. In an instant, it seemed to be burning. The golden light dazzled like a huge golden flame, shooting straight up to the sky. Roar! The water dragon, coiled around the young man, let out an earth-shattering roar. Its huge head kept hitting the surroundings as if it was trying to break through the enchantment that the young man had set up. At this moment, not only the water dragon, but even the young man himself felt a huge pressure. It was so heavy that he couldn't breathe. He once again held the great thunder sword in his hand as a precaution. The great thunder sword in his hand made him feel more secure. After all, the great thunder sword was a divine weapon of the Thunder sect. It represented the power of the heavens. However, he still couldn't figure out what kind of spiritual item the young man had brought. How could it be so powerful? Ever since he had gained sentience, he had never felt such an overwhelming pressure apart from when he was undergoing the heavenly tribulation. Even though he was now an 8-headed heavenly dragon, he still felt a sense of fear. It was different from when he was undergoing the heavenly tribulation. It was a fear that came from his bones. Could it be? The young man suddenly recalled a spiritual item, but he immediately shook his head. It was impossible. God's grace is as vast as the ocean. His might is as deep as the prison. The 9 heavens supreme, the golden pung, is here. Yi Yun in the air yelled loudly. As soon as the words left his mouth, the golden canopy above Yi Yun suddenly emitted a golden light and turned into a dazzling flame. After a high-pitched shriek, a giant bird with its wings spread out broke through the golden flames and hovered above Night Cloud's head. Its eyes were wide open. Its wings and claws were golden. There was a poem as proof. The head of the golden Pung Kuan, the eyes of a leopard. It shook the north and the south, strong and brave. It soared into the sky, and the dragon laughed miserably. Hundreds of birds hid their heads in the wind, and the birds trembled in fear with their claws. A golden-winged Pung. The young man was soaked in cold sweat. According to the records in the Buddhist scriptures, the golden-winged Pung was the protector of the Buddha. It loved to eat dragons. Due to their long bodies, the golden-winged Pung tasted the dragons like noodles to humans. Therefore, the dragons were the most afraid of the golden-winged Pung when their lives were in danger. No wonder, the young man thought. No wonder the water dragon was so anxious. Roar! The water dragon on the young man became even more restless as soon as the golden-winged Pung appeared. Its eyes turned red as it let out a series of roars. Its body grew bigger as its scales spread out. Shui Yuan, calm down, the young man said while stroking the water dragon. I'm here, don't be afraid. As the young man comforted the water dragon, he took out the Thunderfire bead and activated it again. Under his control, the Thunderfire bead glowed red again. In the blink of an eye, it became 1 foot long. It spun non-stop, and faint purple lightning appeared on it. Shui Yuan catch. As soon as the young man finished speaking, the Thunderfire orb in his hand slowly rose up and flew toward the water dragon. The water dragon opened its mouth slightly, and a dazzling silver light shot out. A foot-long silver orb slowly flew out of the water dragon's mouth and floated toward the Thunderfire orb. After the red and white beads met, they instantly merged into a golden bead. The golden color was dazzling and dazzling. The water dragon opened its mouth again and sucked the golden orb into its mouth. Then it closed its huge eyes. Buzz! As soon as the golden bead entered its mouth, the water dragon immediately underwent a huge change. Its entire body began to gradually change color. From the dragon's mouth to the dragon's horns, then to the dragon's body, scales and claws, everything turned purple in an instant. The dragon's body also doubled in size. Its entire body was surrounded by purple lightning, and its 3-foot-long whiskers were slightly fluttering. Roar! The water dragon opened its eyes. Its eyes were blood-red and majestic. A deafening dragon roar rang out. At this moment, the water dragon was no longer as restless as before. Instead, it was like an overlord looking down on the world. It calmly looked at the golden-winged rock in front of it. You're very smart. You actually thought of combining the Thunderfire orb and the water dragon. Yi Yin smiled. Likewise, I also didn't expect you to be able to summon a rock. The young man said, Who do you think will win this round? Your Shui Yuan or my golden rock? Yi Yin asked. That's hard to say. However, one thing is for sure. If both of us attack at the same time, not to mention this garden, even the entire agonized Eagle Peak would tremble. The young man said seriously, I don't care. I'm not from the heavenly court. I don't have so many rules. Even if the entire agonized Eagle Peak is turned upside down, I don't care. Yi Yin smiled evilly. Forget it. I admit defeat, the young man said as he released the seal. Shui Yuan, you can go back. With that said, he waved at the water dragon. The thunder fire orb flew out of the water dragon's mouth and landed in his hand. He looked at the water dragon again. It immediately returned to its original appearance. After nodding 3 times at the young man, it disappeared. The young man knew that if both of them attacked at the same time, it would definitely affect agonized Eagle Peak. It was inevitable that innocent people would be hurt. As a member of the Heavenly Court, he had to abide by the heavenly rules. Harming lives for no reason was a serious crime. Fortunately, Yi Yun reminded him. Otherwise, things would really have gone south. Forget it. It's a draw. Yi Yun looked up to the sky and laughed. It seemed like he enjoyed forcing the young man to admit defeat. Since the other party had no intention of competing, he didn't want to fight anymore. With a wave of his right hand, the golden-winged Peng disappeared into thin air. The two of them slowly landed on the ground. After landing, Yi Yun walked up to the young man and put his arm around his shoulder. Brother Bai, you're too mean. You're either using a magic tool or a water dragon when you're fighting, but you don't show your strength. You're a little petty. The young man looked helpless. He waved his hand and smiled. I can't beat you, Brother Jean. If I don't use artifacts, how can I fight? Isn't that asking for a snub? What do you think? Brother Bai, you're too humble. You're now an 8-division heavenly dragon. Your strength is not what it used to be. It's just that Brother Bai has always kept a low profile and refused to show it. I'm not wrong, right? The two people who were fighting in full swing with murderous intent now looked like brothers who hadn't seen each other in years. The young man smiled. He didn't answer Yi Yun. Instead, he asked, what are you doing here instead of cultivating in that box? Chapter 13. Because of him, the young man looked back at Yi Fan and asked with a frown. That's right. Yi Yun took a deep breath and said slowly, I recently received news that in 3 days, the Yi family will face a great calamity. If things go wrong, they might even be wiped out. Wiped out? When Yi Fan heard these 2 words, he was greatly shocked. The Sword Spirit's words were actually the same as Fujiwara Chico's words? Is the Yi family really going to face a great calamity? Who has the strength to wipe out the Yi family that has been passed down for nearly 1,000 years? Could it be those Fusong people? What made him even more puzzled was that the Sword Spirit came for him. How did he get involved with him? Yi Fan frowned. The more he thought about it, the more his head hurt. Regardless of this, Yi Fan thought, let's listen to what the 2 people in front of me have to say. Wiped out. The young man frowned after hearing this. He stretched out his right hand and calculated a few times. Then he said, no wonder I've been feeling restless these days. I felt that something would happen to the Yi family. I've been secretly paying attention to the Yi family's every move. You're right. From the divination, it's really a calamity. A country is about to fall. There must be demons. Yi Yun sighed and said, you should be more informed than me. The world is about to be in chaos. This time, foreign races invade Huaxia. I'm afraid that people will be plunged into misery and suffering again. Your information is really fast. You can even see through such a heavenly secret, said the young man. But all of this is fixed. It's also God's will. Huaxia has been strong for thousands of years. It's common to be separated for a long time and separated for a long time. You and I have jumped out of the 3 realms and are not in the 5 elements. Why should we care about this? Besides, what does this have to do with him? The young man looked at Yi Fan as he spoke. Don't care? If it's really just an ordinary war like you said, then it's fine. As far as I know, Yi Yun walked up to the young man and whispered a few words into his ear. Is this true? The young man's expression changed instantly. Where did you hear this from? You don't need to know where I found out. This is no small matter. It's no longer just a matter of the mortal world. Yi Yun said, the most important thing right now is to take care of the Yi clan's matters. Then we can plan for the long term. What do you think? The young man hesitated for a moment and said, Brother Jean, do you have any good ideas? You hold an important position in the heavenly court, so you can't violate the heavenly rules and interfere with this matter. Although I've already left the heavenly realm. You should know, Yin said as he pointed to the sky. There are countless pairs of eyes watching me up there. I don't want to get into trouble. As the saying goes, whoever started the trouble should end it. The trouble caused by the Yi family should be dealt with by the Yi family. Don't you think so? Yi Yun said as he stared at the confused Yi Fan. Him. The young man stared at Yi Fan, who was at a loss. Him? He's Eldritch. Yi Yun looked at Yi Fan and said softly, Eldritch? The young man was shocked when he heard this, and his face was cloudy. Back then, he and I hit it off, and we were sworn brothers. After he scattered and self-destructed, I investigated for many years and found out that he was reincarnated in the Yi clan. Ian mentioned this, and his thoughts were in a mess. The 6 paths of reincarnation are really cruel. It doesn't matter if you're a celestial being, a chicken, a duck, or an ant. Once you enter the cycle of reincarnation, all your memories of your previous life will be erased. Once you're impermanent, everything will come to an end. That's right. Why are you so sentimental? The young man said, This is the heavenly Tao. You know it better than I do. Heavenly Tao. Bullsh *T. Yin scolded. Heaven and earth are heartless and treat all living things like straw dogs. I hate you so-called righteous gods the most. You always talk about the heavenly Tao. Back then, if it weren't for you so-called celestial beings, would my brother have scattered and self-destructed? Celestial beings? Bah. Ian thought of the scene where his sworn brother Eldritch had scattered and self-destructed and became emotional. It's a pity that I was sealed back then and couldn't help. Otherwise, Ian turned around and stared at the young man, his eyes shining with golden light. I would have destroyed their bodies and souls. Brother Gene, calm down. The young man advised. I've heard about what happened back then. Those celestial beings did go overboard, but there's nothing we can do about it. Heaven's might is unpredictable, and it's hard to go against heaven's will. In the vast Taishu, there must be rules. Moreover, those celestial beings were punished because of this. Now, it's been hundreds of years. No matter how angry you are, it's useless. Moreover, for your sworn brother Eldritch, it might not be a bad thing for him to enter the cycle of reincarnation. What do you think? After Ian heard the young man's words, his emotions gradually calmed down, and the golden light in his eyes returned to normal. Sigh, what you said isn't unreasonable. Back then, my sworn brother was indeed a little conceited. I've tried to persuade him many times, but he just wouldn't listen. He relied on his cultivation to do whatever he wanted. In the end, he ended up committing suicide. Now that he's reincarnated into the Yi family, he's well-behaved and has the appearance of a scholar. He no longer has the shadow of Eldritch from back then. Ian shook his head and sighed. Brother Gene, it's a blessing in disguise. Take it easy. Right now, resolving the Yi family's calamity is the most important thing. Brother Gene is farsighted. I'm sure you've already thought of a way to resolve this, the young man said. According to what I know, in 3 days, 4 peerless experts will come and challenge us. Their goal is the Yi family's weapon forging manual. One of them has the peerless divine weapon, the fiery sword, and the other has cultivated for many years as a demon, Yi Yun said. Fiery sword? Demon? The young man frowned. It's indeed troublesome. Brother Gene, do you have any countermeasures? If we want to deal with the fiery sword, we can only rely on him, Yi Yun said as he looked at Yi Fan. On the way here, I've observed him. He's born with spiritual veins and has an immortal bone. These are rare cultivation materials. Moreover, the snake shadow sword in his hand is biting cold. It's the nemesis of the fiery sword. It's a pity that his cultivation is too low. Although he's born with spiritual veins, he's still young. There's only 3 days left. He definitely won't have enough time to cultivate normally. So, Ian said with a smile, I want to help him open up all the meridians in his body and give him a few pointers. After all, he's the reincarnation of my sworn brother. No matter what, I can't embarrass him too much. This way, you and I won't have to personally take action. We won't violate the laws of heaven, and we can also solve the Yi family's problem. Isn't this the best of both worlds? Will this work? The young man, said as he glanced at Yi Fan. He's immortal now, with just him alone. Of course it's not just him alone, Yi Yun said with a smile. You've protected the Yi family for so many years. You should know better than me that the Yi family is a place of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Not to mention the strength of the Yi family's head. Yi Kong's ethereal sword technique is unparalleled in the world. Even the person at the top of the eagle's distress peak is not to be underestimated. Although the Yi family's rules are strict at this critical juncture where the family is about to be exterminated, the rules aren't that important anymore, right? With these 4 people holding the fort, I believe that we can turn this misfortune into a blessing. You're talking about, the young man said as he pointed at the top of the mountain. Him? Yi Yin nodded. But will he take action? The young man asked with a frown. It shouldn't be a problem if you go and persuade him, Yi Yin said. Me? The young man asked. You're better at talking than me. It's better for you to go, Yi Yin said with a smile. Besides, you're someone from above. You have more influence than me. All right then, I'll give it a try, the young man said helplessly. As for the matter I told you just now, you must find a way to investigate it. This is no small matter, Yi Yin said. Don't worry about that. After thinking about it, he still felt that it was safer to call him Exalted Immortal. What Exalted Immortal? Same old rules. You call me Brother Kim, and I'll call you Brother Yi, Yi Yin said. Yi Yin said, You must have heard what I said just now. You are the reincarnation of my sworn brother Eldritch. For thousands of years, I've made such a congenial friend, but I was forced to death by those bullshit immortals who only talked about benevolence, righteousness, and morality. Now that I know that you've reincarnated into the Yi clan, and that the Yi clan is facing a great disaster, how can I just watch you throw your life away? The place I'm taking you to now is your immortal's cave from back then. Not many people know about this place. You'll know when you get there, Yi Yin said as he slowed down. He was afraid that if he went too fast, he would hurt this reincarnated sworn brother of his. Yes, Brother Kim, Yi Fan said. Brother Kim. Back then, Eldritch was his surname also Yi? His surname was Yi, but it wasn't the same as yours. It was Ten Leaf, Yi Yin replied with a smile. What was my name back then? Yi Fan asked. Chapter 14. Yi Bufan? What a domineering name. Yi Fan thought. Although this name was only one word different from his current name, it sounded like the difference between heaven and earth. His name was ordinary, but his name from his previous life was so imposing. The difference of one word was poles apart. When he was born, his father, Yi Kong, had looked for the fortune teller, divinator, to read his fortune. He remembered that divinator had pondered for a long time and told his father, Yi Kong, that this child had a kind nature in his previous life, but he had killed too many people. In this life, he was destined to be Bufan. He would either be a hero who saved the common people or a murderous demon king. Good and evil were separated by a single thought. Whether he was a hero or a demon king would depend on his own fortune. After Yi Kong went back and thought about it for a night, he decided to name him Yi Fan. He hoped that he wouldn't become a hero or a demon king. Since ancient times, heroes and demon kings didn't have good endings. He only hoped that this child would be an ordinary mortal. Later on, Yi Kong had also paid a visit to his close friend, Qing Chinzi of the Purple Sun Monastery, hoping that he could change Yi Fan's fate. However, Qing Chinzi told Yi Kong that the fortune teller was right. Everything would depend on Yi Fan's fate, and external forces would not be able to change anything. Everything would depend on the will of the heavens and the child's fate. We're almost there. Yi Yin interrupted Yi Fan's thoughts and said. After hearing this, Yi Fan gathered his thoughts and looked down from the clouds. At this time, the sky was slightly bright. A huge green mountain peak appeared in front of his eyes. It towered into the clouds. What was surprising was that the entire mountain was carved into the peak. It was like a seal rising steeply from the ground. It went straight up and down and was surrounded by steep cliffs. He had never heard of such a mountain in his life. Instead of calling it a mountain, It was better to call it a super huge rock. The entire mountain was in the shape of a square pillar. It was like the work of the gods. The top of the mountain was unusually smooth and flat. It was very wide. From his perspective, the mountaintop was no less than 10 mu. In the center of the mountaintop, there was a pavilion surrounded by several tall pine trees. On the entire mountain, other than the few trees on the mountaintop, there were no plants. There was not even a blade of grass. It was all smooth stones. "Brother Kim, this is—" Yi Fan asked. "Phoenix Cry Mountain, Ling Yun Cave," Yi Yan said as he slowed down. He pressed the cloud and slowly descended for the top of Phoenix Cry Mountain. When they reached the halfway point of Feng Ming Mountain, Yi Yan stopped and waved his sleeve at the cliff. The cliff suddenly rumbled, and a stone door slowly opened. This stone door was completely natural, and from the outside, it was impossible to tell that it was a stone door. "Follow me in," Yi Yun said as he floated into the cave with Yi Fan. When his feet landed on the ground, Yi Yun let go of Yi Fan's shoulder and waved his sleeve at the stone door. The stone door slowly closed. The moment the stone door closed, the entire cave was instantly filled with light, as if it was daytime. Only then did Yi Fan see the entire cave clearly. This cave was very big, ridiculously big. The cave was more than 300 meters deep and more than 10 meters tall. It was divided into 2 levels, and there was a stone staircase between the 2 levels. The cave walls were smooth, and there was a huge luminous pearl hanging from the ceiling. The light in the cave was emitted by it. The entire cave was like the human world. There were pavilions, streams, and a back garden. The garden was filled with exotic flowers and plants. There were small bridges and flowing water. Everything was there. It was like a paradise. You were the one who discovered this cave back then. After you renovated it, it became what it is now, Yi Yun said. "This floor is the garden, and the upper floor is the living area. There's a bedroom, a study room, a bath, a kitchen, a wine cellar, a practice room for you to practice in seclusion, and an alchemy room. Go take a bath, change your clothes, and eat something. I have something to do. I will come back in 2 hours. I will help you open up your meridians and teach you a move. It should not be a problem for you to deal with the distant fire sword." After Yi Yun finished speaking, he turned and walked towards the stone door. He turned back at the stone door. "That's right. There's a Baihu in this garden. You saved it in the Great Snow Mountain of Tibet. After you reincarnated, it was guarding the cave. It is not here now. It must have gone out to gather herbs. It will take at least half a day and at most a few days. If it comes back later, you don't have to be afraid. Just tell it that I brought you here." After he finished speaking, he turned and left the cave. Baihu? Gathering herbs? Yi Fan was confused when he heard that. Talk to it? It was a Baihu. He did not know the language of beasts. How could he tell it? Yi Fan walked towards the stairs and went up to the 2nd floor while letting his imagination run wild. The 2nd floor was the same size as the 1st floor. It was divided into more than 10 rooms of different sizes. The rooms were arranged in a picturesque disorder. They were of different sizes and were built in a circular shape. In the middle of the room was a huge stone table. Around the stone table were 13 stone chairs. There was also a golden luminous pearl hanging above the stone table. When Yi Fan saw this, he couldn't help but sigh. To dig out such a huge cave from the mountain peak and then carve out these pavilions and pavilions in the cave. Furthermore, they even directed water into the cave. How did they manage to complete such a huge project? It must be known that the Yi clan's ancestral home alone took 20 years to build. Hundreds of skilled craftsmen were employed. To build such a cave was more than 100 times more difficult than building the Yi clan's ancestral home. This was a precipice, not to mention transporting materials. Even a person would not be able to climb up. There was only one explanation for such a project, and that was the work of a deity. Other than that, there was no other possibility. He quickly found the bathroom. The bathroom structure was very strange. The overall shape was a huge lotus pond. Beside the lotus pond was a lotus root. On top of the lotus root was a candlestick. The water in the lotus pond was rippling and the mist was rising. Yi Fan used his hand to test the water. It was actually hot water. How could there be a hot spring in this cave? This place was indeed a deity's cave, a paradise. Because the dragon and Brother Kim had fought for half the night, the entire back garden was almost turned over. After a night of torment, Yi Fan's body was already covered in mud. He found a lot of clothes in the bathroom stone cabinet. These clothes were all white. The workmanship was exquisite and the materials were high quality. They were all ancient clothes. From the style, they were all from the Song dynasty. Yi Fan knew in his heart that these clothes must be from his previous life. He did not think too much about it. He quickly took off all his clothes and jumped into the lotus pond naked. He had a beautiful bath. The water in the lotus pond was soft and slightly hot. Yi Fan, who did not sleep last night, soon began to feel his eyelids drooping. He fell into a deep sleep. After an unknown amount of time, Yi Fan was awakened by the rumbling sound of the stone door opening. Only then did he realize that he was still soaking in the lotus pond. He hurriedly got up. Brother Kim must have returned, but he actually fell asleep in the pond. It was really inappropriate. Yi Fan thought about it. He stood up and walked out of the lotus pond. However, the moment he stepped out of the lotus pond naked, the bathroom's stone door opened. A woman in black stood in front of him. The woman let out a sharp scream. Chapter 15. Plop. Yi Fan shouted and jumped into the lotus pond again. He only stuck his head out of the water and stuttered. "Who are you?" The woman standing in front of him looked like she was in her 20s. She was dressed in green and had fair skin. She was tall and voluptuous with a sword hanging on her waist. She had red lips and white teeth. Her eyes were bright. Her eyebrows were like ink. Her face was like a peach petal, and her long black hair reached her waist. She looked like a beauty. "How dare you trespass into the Lingyun cave? Get lost." The woman removed her hands that covered her eyes. Her face was red as she reprimanded loudly. Are you that Bai? Bai who?" Yi Fan's face was red as he asked tentatively. He did not expect that the Baihu that Yi Yun mentioned had already transformed into a human. Ever since he was young, other than his mother, no other woman had ever seen his body. Now, a woman that he did not know had seen his naked body. Yi Fan was so embarrassed that he wanted to find a hole to hide in. Who are you? How did you know?" Seeing that the other party knew her identity, the woman in green immediately became alert. She pulled out her sword and pointed it at Yi Fan, who was in the pond. "Who are you? Speak. Otherwise, you will become a ghost under my sword." My name is Yi Fan. Brother Kim brought me here. He said that you might have gone out to gather herbs. Half a day at least, a few days at most," Yi Fan explained. "Brother Kim, where is he?" The woman in green softened her tone, but the sword in her hand was still pointed at Yi Fan. He had something to do and went out. He said that he would be back soon. Yi Fan continued to explain. "Yi Fan," the woman in green frowned and asked, "What is your relationship with Brother Kim? Why did he bring you here?" "Well, miss, listen to me," Yi Fan said. "Brother Kim said that I am the reincarnation of his sworn brother, Eldritch." So, Yi Fan had just learned from Yun that the Baihu in front of him was saved by Eldritch in his previous life. So he told him the truth. Clang! When the woman in green heard Yi Fan's words, she was so shocked that the sword in her hand fell to the ground. You turn around. Turn around quickly." The woman in green picked up the sword and pointed at Yi Fan. "Hurry up." Yi Fan was dumbfounded. He didn't know why this girl wanted him to do this. He could only slowly turn around. Ever since he left home, he had never met a normal person. The Japanese ninja who would fight without saying a word, the cold and weird old man in black robe, Fujiwara no Chiko, who saved his life and told him to get lost, the 8th Division Heavenly Dragon that was worshipped by the Yi family for generations, and his sworn brother, the Golden Ring Sword Spirit, in his previous life. Now, he met a woman in green who wanted him to turn around naked. Sigh. Yi Fan sighed his heart. The fortune teller was right. My life is really extraordinary. He stood up slightly and showed his back to the woman in green. On his fair back, there was a red mark in the shape of a crescent moon. Brother, when the woman in green saw this, she threw away her sword and jumped into the lotus pond. She hugged Yi Fan tightly and cried, "It's really you. It's been 300 years. I've been waiting for you for so long." Sob, 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 this. What's going on? The naked Yi Fan's face turned red. He was stunned on the spot as if he was petrified. This woman jumped into the lotus pond without any hesitation. One had to know that he was completely naked right now. He only felt that her body was soft and fragrant. He looked down at the woman in green. Her clothes were all wet and stuck tightly to her fair skin. Her curvaceous body was in full view. He was only in his 20s this year, an age when he was full of vigor and vigor. In the face of such a sudden beauty, how could he withstand such stimulation? He only felt his blood rush to the top of his head, his throat dry, and his whole body hot and dry. In desperation, he could only raise his hands high and persuade in a loud voice, "Goo, miss, let's talk nicely. This, how can this be? You first. Let go of me. Can you let go of me?" Who knew that when Yi Fan said that, not only did the woman not let go, but she hugged him even tighter. Oh, you guys are progressing really fast. Unknowingly, Yi-Yun was already standing at the door of the bathroom. He crossed his arms and leaned against the door with a smirk on his face. "I've only been out for less than 2 hours, and you guys. Brother Yi, not bad. Jean, Brother Kim, things, it's not what you think. Let go of me first," Yi Fan urged. "I won't." The woman in green wrapped around him like a snake and refused to let go. "You guys go ahead. I'll wait for you in the garden in an hour. There's still time. You guys can continue." Yi-Yun left with a smirk. Brother Kim, Jean. Yi Fan felt that he couldn't clear his name even if he jumped into the Yellow River. "This, immortal fairy, can you let go of me first? Men and women shouldn't touch each other. What kind of scandal is this?" Yi Fan did not know what to do. Immortal fairy? The woman in green who was hugging Yi Fan's neck laughed through her tears. "You call me immortal fairy?" "Yes, immortal fairy. No matter what, you have to let me put on some clothes, right?" Yi Fan saw that calling her immortal fairy worked, so he continued to call her immortal fairy. "Tisk, it's not like I haven't seen it before. So every time you take a bath, I'm the one who scrubbed your back?" The woman in green said and let go of Yi Fan. "You take a bath first. I'll go prepare some dishes and wine. Brother Kim hasn't been here for a long time. It's rare for us to meet today. Let's talk while we eat." The woman in green smiled and walked out of the lotus pond. Yi Fan didn't dare to act rashly. He turned his head away with a red face. The woman in green's clothes were wet and almost transparent. He couldn't take advantage of her. By the way, the woman in green walked to the door and turned around. "My name is Zhao Wanting. In the future, you can call me Xiao Zhao like before." She then walked out of the bathroom. After the woman in green left, Yi Fan let out a long sigh of relief. It was said that women were fickle. Confucius once said that only women and vile people were difficult to deal with. This woman was crying her eyes out just now, but when he called her immortal fairy, she was in a good mood. Her tears turned into laughter. "Sigh, the ancients didn't lie to me." Yi Fan sighed. By the time Yi Fan finished washing up and changing his clothes, it was already an hour later. He purposely picked out a set of simple yet elegant clothes from a large pile of clothes and changed into them. What surprised him was that the clothes looked as if they were tailor-made and fit him perfectly. After tidying up, Yi Fan walked out of the bathroom and went to the garden on the lower floor. There was a pavilion in the middle of the garden. There were stone tables and stone stools. The stone table was already filled with delicacies. At this time, Yi-Yun and Baihu were sitting opposite each other. It was unknown what they were talking about. Looking at Baihu, she was smiling with her head lowered. Yi-Yun also laughed heartily from time to time. He seemed to be very happy. Baihu's eyes were sharp. She immediately saw Yi Fan walking over from not far away. It was fine if she didn't look, but when she saw him, she was immediately surprised and happy. She saw Yi Fan. He wore a white robe with golden threads inlaid with jade. He wore a bronze crown with 9 lotuses on his head. He wore dark green cloud boots on his feet and a jade belt on his waist. His face was as cold as jade, and his eyes were as bright as the stars. His lips were red, and his teeth were white. His hair and beard were like lacquer. He was really an elegant and handsome man. Ha ha! Yian clapped and cheered. Brother Yi is indeed a dragon among men. Buffon's appearance is even more outstanding and suave than Eldritch back then. Xiao Zhao did not wait bitterly for you for more than 300 years in vain. Back then, she was still worried that you would be a woman after reincarnating. Now, it seems like she worried too much. After saying that, Yi Yun glanced at Baihu. That Baihu blushed and looked extremely charming. I made a fool of myself in front of Brother Kim. Yi Fan sat down at the stone table as he spoke. He heard the conversation between Yi Fan and Sky Dragon in the Yi family's ancestral home. He knew that Brother Kim was extremely righteous and valued relationships. He even treated Eldritch with sincerity. Now, Yi Fan already treated him as a real big brother. Therefore, he was no longer so reserved. Come. Brother Yi, it's rare for the three of us to get together today. Let's put other matters aside for now. Today, let's drink 1,000 cups and get drunk. Yi Yun was in a good mood. He raised his cup and said loudly, Brother Kim, it's not that I'm a party pooper, but today, the Yi family is facing a calamity and my grandfather is also. I really don't have the mood. I really don't have the mood to do that. I hope Big Brother Jean won't take offense. Yi Fan said. What he said was the truth. Who would still have the mood to drink when facing a calamity? Oh, I see. Yi Yun put down his cup and smiled. It seems like I was careless. You're now a member of the Yi family. Of course, you're worried about the safety of the Yi family. However, you can rest assured that I will help you open up all the meridians in your body in a while. Then, I'll give you a few pointers. What do you think? As for your grandfather, Yi Yun, don't worry. If I possess him, it will only be good for him. There will be no harm. Brother Yi, after you reincarnated, you have the mystery of separation of Een. Who in the world doesn't want to be possessed by Brother Kim once? Baihu comforted Yi Fan. You must know that Brother Kim has a true pure yang body. There is a huge difference between him and those celestial immortals. Those celestial immortals have to balance the dragon and the tiger. Brother Kim, on the other hand, is born with a pure yang body. The two can't be mentioned in the same breath. After being possessed by Brother Kim once, all the meridians in your body will be opened up. Ordinary people who are possessed will have their lifespans extended and all their illnesses will disappear. Cultivators who are possessed will have their cultivation greatly increased and have hope of ascension. Therefore, Brother Yi, you don't have to worry. This is a blessing, not a curse. Many thanks to Brother Kim for fulfilling my wish. Yi Fan is ashamed. If the Yi family can safely survive this calamity, Yi Fan will be eternally grateful. Yi Fan was shocked after hearing Baihu's words. Then he bowed to Yi Yun. He originally thought that his grandfather, Yi Yun, would be harmed. Only now did he realize that this was a great blessing. Sigh. Yi Yun helped Yi Fan up. How many times have I told you? You and I are sworn brothers, friends of life and death. It's too unreasonable to say such things. It's inconvenient for me to meet you in my true form. Also, I saw that your grandfather, Yi Yun, had encountered a bottleneck in his cultivation, so I possessed him. After 2 days, I will send you back to the Yi family. At that time, I will naturally leave your grandfather's body. Brother Yi, you can rest assured. It seems that this little brother's worries are groundless. Since that's the case, then I can rest assured. Today, I will risk my life to accompany you and drink with you, big brother. After hearing the two's words, Yi Fan felt a lot more at ease. He couldn't be too tactless and spoil the mood. Come, Brother Kim, little sister Xiao Zhao. Yi Fan raised his wine cup. I, Yi Fan, am truly blessed from my previous life to be able to meet the two of you. Let me offer you a toast. After he finished speaking, he downed the wine in one gulp. This wine was indeed not ordinary. It was rich and fragrant, definitely not something that could be brewed in this world. Ah, good. Delightful. Yi Yun laughed heartily. After downing the wine in his cup, He once again filled Yi Fan's cup to the brim. Brother Yi is indeed a straightforward person. As expected of my sworn brother, you speak straightforwardly and never beat around the bush. Delightful, delightful. Although this little sister can't hold her liquor well, today is the first time we've met after more than 300 years. Today, this little sister will go all out and drink 1,000 cups with you, Brother Yi. That Baihu also raised her head and downed the wine in her cup. Xiao Zhao, you don't have to force yourself. Don't reveal your true form and scare Brother Yi. Right now, he is Yi Fan, not Eldritch. In a moment, if Brother Yi drinks too much, you still have to take care of him. Yi Yan said with a mischievous smile. Brother Kim, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. That Baihu smiled. How can I be rude? Come, Brother Yi, let me offer you another toast. Chapter 16. When Yi Fan woke up again, the sky was already dark. He found himself lying on a large stone bed. Beside the stone bed, Baihu was sitting at the side, looking at him in a daze. Xiao Zhao. Yi Fan got up and looked around. The bedroom was very spacious and tidy. There was a large stone bed, tall bronze candlesticks, a simple stone table and stone stools, and a tea set on the stone table. That was all. This is where you slept in the past. I saw that you drank too much, so I brought you here directly. How is it? Are you used to it? Xiao Zhao said. Used to it? How can I not be used to it? Yi Fan said. To be honest, he liked this place from the bottom of his heart. Do you want to eat something? Just now, you and Brother Kim only drank. Xiao Zhao said. I'm not hungry. Yi Fan said. When he saw that there was only him and Xiao Zhao in the room, and Brother Kim was nowhere to be seen, he hurriedly asked, Where's Brother Kim? He couldn't delay the business. The problem with the Yi family had not been solved yet. Brother Kim, he could drink a lot. He's still drinking. Xiao Zhao said with a smile. What? He's still drinking? Yi Fan was shocked. He's not drunk. One had to know that this wine was not ordinary wine. He only drank a few glasses and slept for the whole afternoon. It's rare for him to be in such a good mood, and it's rare for him to have a chance to drink this kind of wine. This is the 100 Flowers drunk that you personally brewed back then. It's been hundreds of years, and it's a rare wine. Back then, you and Brother Kim both liked this wine. If you weren't drunk just now, he would definitely have pulled you to continue drinking. Xiao Zhao said with a smile. Eldritch. Oh, what did I say? Oh no, what kind of person was I back then? Yi Fan really wanted to know about this. Sigh, it's a long story, but you should know your background now, Xiao Zhao said as she stood up. Brother Yi, this isn't a good place to talk. Come with me, I'll take you somewhere. With that said, she turned around and walked out of the stone house. After Yi Fan heard this, he quickly got up and followed behind her. The two of them walked one after another to the stone table in the center of the open space. This stone table was about 30 feet long and 10 feet wide. It was abnormally wide and made from a single piece of precious stone. It was completely natural and did not have a single pattern on it. The 13 stone chairs were the same. The wide chairs were glossy and covered with soft grass mats. There was one chair in the center, and 6 chairs were arranged on both sides. After the two of them arrived at the stone table, Xiao Zhao walked straight to the stone chair in the middle and pressed on the armrest of the stone chair. A rumbling sound could be heard, and a stone slab on the top right of the stone chair slowly fell down. After it had completely fallen down, Yi Fan realized that there were 13 steps on the stone slab. This was a secret passage that led straight to the top of the mountain. After the stone slab had fallen down, the silver moonlight instantly poured down and illuminated the entire stone table in a brilliant light. Brother Yi, come with me, Xiao Zhao said as she walked up the stairs. Yi Fan was also very curious. Not only was this cave a blessed land, it was filled with birds and fragrant flowers. It was also filled with traps. It seemed that he had spent a lot of effort to build this cave back then. The two of them quickly arrived at the top of the mountain. Once they reached the top, Yi Fan immediately felt a cool breeze blowing. Suddenly, the sky opened up. There was a crescent moon in the sky, and the sky was filled with stars. What a wonderful place! Yi Fan sighed inwardly. He could now see the full picture of the entire mountaintop. The entire mountaintop was very flat. There were 7 huge pine trees around the mountaintop. The pine trees were very tall and had luxuriant foliage. The ancient trees towered into the sky. Right in the middle was a pavilion. The pavilion was simple and unadorned. There was a stone table, stone stools, tea trays, tea sets, and everything else. In front of the pavilion, there was a stone plaque hanging on it. There were several large golden ancient seals that were bold and powerful. It gave off an aura of Buffon. Full Moon Pavilion. What good name. Yi Fan sighed. It seemed that he was also an elegant person in the past. Brother Yi, don't just stand there and look. Let's talk in the pavilion. Xiao Zhao interrupted Yi Fan's thoughts. Okay. Yi Fan agreed. He slowly walked in the pavilion with Xiao Zhao and sat down. Brother Yi, have some tea. Xiao Zhao got up and poured tea for Yi Fan. Sister Xiao Zhao, can you tell me now? Yi Fan took a sip of tea, put down the teacup, and said with a smile. This Xiao Zhao was in the body of Baihu. She was mischievous. However, she was extremely intelligent and considerate. She did things naturally and generously. Not a single drop of water leaked out. The tea was still warm. This meant that Xiao Zhao knew that he was eager to know about his past life. Therefore, she had prepared everything in advance and was only waiting for him to wake up. Yi Fan's impression of this Xiao Zhao was getting better and better. He was also very glad that he was able to save her in the past. Yi Fan was very happy to have such a considerate sister. Which part does brother you want to hear? Xiao Zhao took a sip of tea and said softly, Of course, everything. Tell me everything you know. Yi Fan said. Right now, he wanted to know more than anyone else what his past life was like. Then again, who didn't want to know about their past life? Moreover, who didn't want to know that they were an all-powerful figure in their past life? I don't know what happened before you saved me. If you want to talk about it, you can only start from when you saved me. Xiao Zhao sorted out her emotions and said, I think Brother Kim has already told you. 500 years ago, I was an ordinary Baihu. Wait a minute. Yi Fan said in surprise. 500 years ago? Didn't I reincarnate for only 20 years? How could I have saved you 500 years ago? Yi Fan was a little puzzled. He interrupted Xiao Zhao and asked, Is there something wrong with that? Xiao Zhao was very puzzled why he asked this. How long did I live in my past life? Yi Fan asked. You started cultivating in the Tang dynasty. You died 300 years ago. How many years did you live? Xiao Zhao understood what he meant and asked him back. Tang dynasty? 300 years ago. Yi Fan exclaimed after he finished calculating. Oh my God, I actually lived for more than 500 years. Yi Fan couldn't believe it. It's no wonder. You're now immortal. How can you understand the magic of immortals? After Xiao Zhao finished explaining, she continued, I lived in the snowy mountains of Tibet since I was a child. Every day, I lived without worries. My parents cultivated diligently after they gained wisdom. They never hurt any living beings. They only hoped that one day they could pass the heavenly tribulation and ascend. However, disaster came unexpectedly. That day, my parents took me out to play. They didn't expect to meet a yellow-robed Taoist on the way. That Taoist was accompanying a person who looked like a prince to play in the snowy mountains. The prince saw that my parents' fur was smooth, so he shot an arrow with a bow. He wanted to get my parents' fur. However, my parents had cultivated for nearly 100 years, so they easily dodged the arrow. They didn't want to have any disputes with humans, so they turned around and ran back with me. Who would have thought that the prince would fly into a rage and order the Taoist to catch my parents? When the Taoist saw that my parents had cultivated for nearly 100 years, he also wanted to snatch my parents' Naiden. The Taoist cultivation wasn't low. In less than 10 minutes, he caught up with my parents. In order to protect my mother, my father fought with the Taoist to buy time for my mother to escape. When my mother saw this, she could only run away with me with tears in her eyes. She was afraid that the Taoist would chase us home and catch us. So she deliberately ran in the opposite direction. However, although my father had cultivated for nearly 100 years, he only absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and the essence of the sun and moon. He didn't cultivate any powerful fighting spells. How could he be the yellow-robed Taoist opponent? At this point, Xiao Zhao could no longer hold back the pain in her heart. Tears fell down her cheeks. After that Taoist killed my father, he caught up with us very quickly. My mother's cultivation was slightly higher than my father's, so she tried her best to buy time for me to escape. In the end, I was lucky enough to hide in a cave. I watched as the Taoist took my parents' Niden and swallowed it himself. Then, he skinned them and gave my parents' fur to the prince. At this time, Xiao Zhao was crying so hard that she couldn't speak. Slap! Yifan was so angry that he slammed the table and stood up. He was so angry that his hair stood up. He's worse than an animal. How could there be such a scum in the Taoist sect? Xiao Zhao, don't cry. After I settle my family's affairs, bring me to that old bastard. I'll make him pay with his blood. There's no need for that anymore, Xiao Zhao said as she wiped her tears and stopped crying. That yellow-robed Taoist has been killed by you. What? What? I've already killed him? What's going on? Yifan was confused. After my parents died, the yellow-robed Taoist was still unwilling to give up after receiving the inner core and the reward. He wanted to capture me and give me to the prince as a pet, Xiao Zhao continued. That Taoist was extremely sinister. He knew that after my parents died, I would definitely come out to look for food again. At that time, I was still young. After waiting in the cave for half a day, I realized that there was no movement outside, so I thought that the Taoist had already left. I was hungry and thirsty at that time, so I decided to go out to look for food. Who knew that I would meet the yellow-robed Taoist the moment I stepped out? After seeing me, the Taoist was overjoyed and exclaimed that the heavens were helping me. He extended his hand towards me and grabbed the air. At that time, I only felt a suction force pulling me towards the yellow-robed Taoist. Damn it! Yifan was so angry that he couldn't restrain his anger. Just as I was about to be caught by that Taoist, I suddenly heard him scream. In an instant, the ground was covered in blood. I looked at that Taoist and found that his right hand had been chopped off. Blood was flowing out. His severed right hand was still in a grabbing position on the ground, Xiao Zhao said. Really? Yifan was shocked. What happened next? Chapter 17. That white-robed man couldn't have been me in my previous life, right? Yifan asked in confusion. That can't be right. Didn't you say that I killed that old bastard? Why did you say that he escaped? You didn't kill him back then because you didn't know what he did to my parents. In addition, I was only in my teens at the time and had just gained sentience. I couldn't take human form and couldn't speak. Even if I wanted to tell you, I couldn't. Xiao Zhao explained. Then how did I kill him? Yifan asked. After I came to the Lingyun cave, I missed my parents so much that I didn't eat or drink. I became thinner and thinner. You saw that I was sad and couldn't speak. You didn't understand what was going on with me. So you did something that ordinary people couldn't imagine. What did you do? Yifan asked. You took out the spirit pill that the Thousand Demon Halls Hall Master Nieching gave you and fed it to me so that I could take human form and speak. Xiao Zhao looked at Yifan gratefully. Spirit pill? Yifan frowned. What kind of spirit pill? You should know that this spirit pill is extraordinary. Later, you told me that this spirit pill was personally refined by the Thousand Demon Halls Hall Master Nieching. It took him nearly 10 years to refine 12 spirit pills. The name of the pill is the 100-herb pill. In order to refine this pill, he used nearly 100 rare herbs. Although ordinary people can't live forever after eating it, they can still regain their youth and stay young forever. If a cultivator eats it, it can increase their cultivation by nearly 100 years. Moreover, there's another benefit, which is that the cultivator can take human form and remove their hyoid bones, allowing them to speak. In those days, you helped Nie Qing solve a thorny problem. Later, you two became best friends. On your 300th birthday, he gave you this 100-herb pill as a birthday gift. I didn't expect that you would directly give it to me without thinking. I still remember the words you muttered to yourself when you fed me this pill. Xiao Zhao recalled. At that time, while feeding me this pill, you said, Nie Qing, if this Baihu can't take human form after eating your pill, I will beat you back to your original form. This, Yifan didn't know what to say. He had never thought that he was so crazy in his previous life. No wonder when he heard the name Eldritch in the ancestral residence, he frowned. What happened later? Yifan asked again. Less than a day after I took the 100 herbs pill, my body started to change. 3 days later, I became like this. Every time Xiao Zhao thought about how she didn't need to cultivate painstakingly to take human form, she would sigh endlessly. This truly was the result of Laozi's famous saying, "Misfortune is a blessing in disguise." Blessing in disguise. Her parents were cautious and conscientious, diligently cultivating, but the result was that they met with evil. After she lost her parents, she gained a blessing in disguise and obtained this 100 herb pill. The affairs of the world were truly unpredictable. One should know that it was not so easy to take human form. Even if one's talent was high, it would still take at least several hundred years. If one's aptitude was average, it was basically impossible to take human form without thousands of years. After you took human form, were you especially happy? Yifan was very curious about how a spirit would feel after taking human form. I can only use unable to contain my joy to describe it. You are not a different species, so you don't understand how difficult it is to take human form. You also don't know how bitter the path of cultivation is. Merely controlling animal instinct is difficult. This is just like the 7 emotions and 6 desires of you humans. Pure heart and few desires, it is easy to say. Even among you humans, how many people are able to do it? Xiao Zhao picked up the teacup and drank a mouthful of tea. Take our Baihu as an example. Once they can't control their instincts, they will capture those weak animals as food. This is a violation of the great taboo of killing. Some will even transform into handsome men and beautiful women to seduce humans and suck their souls, harming others for their own benefit. If they continue to cultivate like this, it is inevitable that they will be struck by heavenly lightning, their flesh lacerated, and their body and soul destroyed. Thus, I am fortunate enough to take the 100 herb pill. It is truly a blessing that I cultivated in my previous life. This 100 herb pill is actually so miraculous. Yifan exclaimed. But who is this Nieqing? What's the matter with the 1,000 Demon Hall? Yifan questioned closely. Let me tell you this. In your previous life, Eldritch cultivation was shocking. Using Brother Kim's words, his personality was 30% righteous, 30% evil, 30% murderous, and 30% childish. Back then, you made friends all over the world, and most of them were either demons or monsters. Among these friends, there are 3 people who are closest to you. Xiao Zhao said. The closest one is your sworn brother, Brother Kim. Other than him, the other 2 are the 1,000 Demon Hall's Hall Master, Nieqing, and the myriad Immortal Tower's head, Bai Sheng. Xiao Zhao spoke tirelessly. I'm not clear about Nieqing's original body, but I heard from Brother Kim that he was not an ordinary spiritual being. His talent was extraordinary, and it is said that he cultivated into a human form within 100 years. Now, his cultivation is above the earth immortal realm, and he leads the 1,000 Demon Hall. There are mountain spirits and monsters inside, and there are more than 1,000 of them. The 1,000 Demon Hall has strict rules and many experts. Back then, you told me that after Nieqing cultivated into a human form, he saw that the demons in the world were in a difficult situation. They were either killed by demon hunters or killed by heavenly lightning. Nieqing could not bear to see them like this, so he personally created the 1,000 Demon Hall. His goal was to restrain and protect these demons, allowing them to cultivate properly and eventually achieve good results. The 1,000 Demon Hall's rules are extremely strict. It forbids killing, not to mention harming others. If there are any violators, they will be immediately killed without mercy. Moreover, once they enter the 1,000 Demon Hall, no one from the Taoist sect can continue to pursue them. Otherwise, they will become enemies with Nieqing. Back then, there were a few old Taoists who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. They used the slogan of enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens to pursue a spider demon in the 1,000 Demon Hall. In the end, They only wanted to use the spider demon skin to make armor and forcefully take its inner core to increase their own cultivation. Although Nieching did not kill those Taoists, he still crippled their cultivation. He was no different from an ordinary person. As for the myriad immortal tower's head, Bai Sheng, Xiao Zhao continued, I don't know much about him. I only know that he is the same as you, both righteous and evil, and his cultivation has reached the ghost immortal realm. Ghost immortal? Ghosts can also become immortals? Yi Fan realized that there were a lot of strange things in the cultivation world. All things have spirits. As long as an object lives for a long time, it will become a demon. Even objects can become spirits, let alone ghosts, Xiao Zhao said. It is said that ghost immortals can leave the netherworld and enter the light. If they want people, they will be people. If they want ghosts, they will be ghosts. Although they can't be ranked as immortals, they're still free and unfettered. This Bai Sheng's temperament is similar to yours back then. His whereabouts are unpredictable. Every time he comes to find you, no one will know. He scared me a few times. Myriad immortal tower. Could it be that there are tens of thousands of ghost immortals? Yi Fan asked. Xiao Zhao couldn't help but find it funny. How is that possible? The name sounds nice. In fact, instead of calling it the Myriad Immortal Tower, it is better to call it the Myriad Ghost Tower. It is filled with malicious ghosts and vengeful spirits who are temporarily unable to enter the cycle of reincarnation. This Bai Sheng is similar to that Nieching. He can't bear to see them wreak havoc in a human world, so he did some immoral things like finding substitutes. That's why the Myriad Immortal Tower was created. You brought me to this Myriad Immortal Tower once. It's filled with ghostly aura and is far inferior to the Thousand Demon Hall. However, Bai Sheng is doing a good deed. For hundreds of years, battles have been going on for years, and thousands of people have died. If they all found substitutes, then the human world would be plunged into misery and suffering. You live in this Lingyun cave every day, but you still know about the human world. Yi Fan asked curiously. How could I not know? Although this Lingyun cave is a paradise, I can't stay here every day by myself. How boring would that be? Xiao Zhao smiled. That's why I go out from time to time to relax, pick herbs, and chat with the mountain people and listen to them talk about the current situation. This way, the days are better. The world is not peaceful now. As a weak woman, you should go out less, Yi Fan said with concern. All right, you still haven't told me how I killed that old bastard. Hee, you care about me. Xiao Zhao looked straight at Yi Fan and said softly. Of course I care about you. Of course I care. Aren't you my little sister? This Xiao Zhao was really fickle. One moment she would cry, the next moment she would laugh, and now she was so tender. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.